No longer on recess. Thank you, everyone, for being back with us. We have many public hearings today, and we're going to start with agenda item number 5, which is this is a public hearing on Bill 620, 6-20, solid waste, trash, release of balloons prohibited. This bill would prohibit the release of a balloon into the air in certain circumstances, prescribe penalties for the unlawful release of a balloon, and generally amend the law regarding solid waste. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of business day on Wednesday, August 5th. If you would like to follow the progress of a council bill, the council website has a subscribe function. Go to the council website and use the View Council Records and Legislative Updates link to learn how. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Also, there may be technical glitches during the public hearing that may need to be addressed by our staff. So thanks in advance for your patience. As I said, we have many public hearings. It's the first time we've ever had this many. So we're going to keep everyone right to the 2 minutes, please. And Ms. Susan Kennedy will be conducting the public hearing part. And Ms. Kennedy, I understand there are speakers for this topic.
Yes, sir, there are. But just briefly, I would like our interpreter, Diana Lavoy, to quickly give the directions of the 2-minute limit to our Spanish-speaking attendees today.
Gracias, Susan. A las personas que van a dar su testimonio en español, yo soy la intérprete, me llamo Diana. Esto es lo que necesitan saber. Primero, por favor, indican o hablen su testimonio en su idioma preferido, español supongo, de todo el testimonio completo, o puede dar una parte como la mitad si prefiere, y después de eso yo voy a dar la interpretación y luego si usted tiene la otra parte usted puede completar el testimonio, luego yo interpretaré todo para completar todo, así que todo se quedará interpretado. El segundo punto que quiero hacer es que para abrir o cerrar su micrófono por teléfono, siempre toca el asterisco 6. Asterisco 6 para abrir el micrófono, asterisco 6 para cerrarlo. Gracias. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much. Our first speaker for this public hearing is Adam Ortiz.
Members of the council, members of the public, it's a pleasure to testify on this bill in support of the president's desire to be brief. I will say that the department does support this bill. This is a form of basically airborne litter. Balloons are made from latex mylar, can last anywhere from 4 years to 50 or more years in our environment. They often end up in the waste stream or even on the land in our agricultural areas, are considered a nuisance pollutant at best, and at worst can kill wildlife. So the department is prepared to enforce this law. It will be complaint driven. We don't have a lot of documentation about the frequency of balloon releases or the litter impact that they have, but it certainly stands to reason that they do, and we stand ready to enforce this bill. We do have a friendly amendment. We do suggest that the government also not be exempted completely from the law. There is a provision to provide very limited circumstances rather than a blanket exception for the government. I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. President.
Thank you. Our next speaker is State Senator Clarence Lamb.
Thank you. Happy to be here, members of the council, and thank you again for this opportunity to Council President Katz and members of the council to testify in support of Bill 6-20. I'm Clarence Lamb, State Senator in District 12. Last year, I introduced bipartisan legislation to ban the release of balloons statewide. It did pass the Senate and the House, but couldn't be resolved before the pandemic struck our session early. And so this issue was first brought to my attention when Queen Anne's County passed a balloon release bill to ban balloons from repeatedly washing up on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay. Released balloons cause severe harm to birds, marine life, and can cause infrastructure issues when they get stuck in power lines. We saw from testimony in Annapolis how there was a lot of discussion on how these soft materials, which balloons can be made of, can be one of the most dangerous materials that leach into our environment for birds and marine life to consume. There's currently a gap in Maryland litter law which permits balloon releases even though they are detrimental to the environment. The State Attorney General's office informed the General Assembly that a released balloon does not become litter, so to speak, until it lands back on the ground. And as a result, this makes it virtually impossible to enforce our litter laws in balloon release cases. And as I mentioned, we did have bipartisan support. There was a Republican sponsor in the House and passed the Senate. Really just fell victim to timing due to COVID. And so passing this bill will help protect our environment, educate Marylanders about the harms of not properly disposing of balloons and releasing them into the environment. Additionally, it could put more pressure on the state to pass a statewide ban so that Montgomery County's environment is protected from balloons from being released in other counties because there's no control over where they would land. And so I want to thank again Councilperson Hucker for introducing this and the time to do this. I apologize, I'm in a mask. I am in my other capacity a physician at Hopkins, so here testifying on this really what I view to be an important bill and hope that the council will have a favorable vote on Bill 6-20. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Catherine Kullberg.
Good afternoon, President Katz and members of the Council. My name is Catherine Kullberg. I'm the Director of Marine and Wildlife Protection at the Humane Society of the United States in Gaithersburg. I grew up in Germantown and I'm currently a Silver Spring resident. The HSUS strongly supports 620, legislation aimed at ending environmentally unsound balloon releases. Thank you, Councilmember Hucker, for introducing this important bill. While releasing a helium balloon into the atmosphere during a celebratory event or solemn memorial may be visually pleasing, in reality it is extremely detrimental to the environment and causes immense pain and suffering to animals. Once released, balloons can travel for hundreds of miles before they burst or deflate and become litter. Birds, sea turtles, seals, and other marine mammals are injured or killed after ingesting or becoming entangled in balloons and their strings. When latex or mylar balloons burst, they can resemble jellyfish, the natural prey of sea turtles. At particular risk are seabirds, as a recent study found that balloons, including their strings, are the leading marine debris risk of mortality for these animals. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration warn against the practice. Even biodegradable balloons take years to break down in the environment. There are so many eco-friendly alternatives to balloon releases, such as lighting a candle, making a donation in someone's name, or planting a tree. Acts of service are more powerful than littering. And if we were together in person, I would display the helium balloon bunch I pulled off a telephone pole along Connecticut Avenue in Kensington. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Justin Martin.
Hello, my name is Justin Martin. I work for the Animal Welfare Institute, a national nonprofit animal advocacy organization. I wanted to thank Councilmember Hucker for introducing Bill 6-20 to prohibit the intentional release of balloons. Balloons pose a severe threat to wildlife and the environment. In fact, they are considered to be one of the 5 most dangerous forms of marine polluting, snaring and choking animals such as turtles and birds. The same chemical treatment designed to preserve latex balloons from decomposition make it extremely difficult for animals to digest fragments that they eat. This can result in animals starving to death due to their inability to remove material that builds up in their stomach. Balloons are not simply a local problem. After being released, they can rise up to 5 miles in the atmosphere and shatter due to low temperature, raining fragments over a wide area below. In addition to damaging the environment, balloons are also pose a threat to human safety. Mylar balloons are coated in a thin layer of highly conductive metal film, which can cause surges, shorts, and even explosions when these balloons become tangled in electrical wire. Clean Virginia Waterways found that 20% of power outages that occurred in the state during 2015 were the result of Mylar balloons including entangled and overhead power lines. The most significant of these outages left 14,600 customers without power. In San Diego, the transformer overloaded and exploded after its neighboring power lines became entangled with a cluster of released Mylar balloons, resulting in downed power lines and at least one vehicle fire. In Montana, a Mylar balloon ensnared in a power line set off the Saddle View fire, which destroyed 255 acres of land. I'm grateful that Councilmember Hucker has introduced this legislation, and I hope that Montgomery County will adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mark Southerland.
Professional ecologist. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Mark Southerland. Can you?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Great, thanks. Dr. Mark Sutherland, professional ecologist and legislative director for the Safe Skies, Maryland. We are dedicated to the conservation of birds and wildlife and the beneficial interactions with human communities. We urge the County Council to pass this bill banning MAP balloon releases. In September of last year, a distinguished group of scientists determined that, using 2 lines of independent evidence, that there are 29% fewer birds in the United States than there were 50 years ago. This is unsustainable and a scary decline in bird life. And balloons and other plastics are one of the causes of mortality. In particular, balloon releases are extremely widespread and especially damaging forms of pollution. Specifically, they are widespread because they occur in all ecosystems and affect many kinds of wildlife. In fact, if you were to design a method for distributing dangerous pollution, you would release balloons. They're especially damaging, as some of the other speakers have already mentioned, to various kinds of wildlife. In particular, because balloons coat the digestive tract of animals, they are 30 times more likely to kill the animal than hard plastic. So we urge the County Council to pass this bill. Birds and wildlife are an important part. Birds alone provide $300 million of revenue from bird watching to the state of Maryland every year and provide countless more dollars in pest control and pollinator services. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Shane Robinson.
Hi, this is Shane Robinson. Thank you, council members, for hearing this bill, and to Councilmember Hucker for introducing it. It's a good bill. I represent Trash Free Maryland. We're a nonprofit that seeks to reduce trash and litter across the state. We support this legislation, so please pass it. I actually don't think I have anything in my testimony to add that hasn't already been said by the DEP, Senator Lamb, and the 3 other organizations. So I will just stop here, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, that wraps up our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. The next public hearing that we have is agenda item number 6. This is a public hearing on Bill 2820, Human Rights and Civil Liberties, Discrimination in Public Accommodations, LGBTQ Bill of Rights. This bill would prohibit discriminatory practices against certain individuals in places of public accommodation, including nursing homes and other facilities, requires certain notices to individuals, and generally amend the laws regarding prohibited discrimination in places of public accommodation. An HHS committee work session is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, September 24th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of business day, September 17th. Ms. Kennedy, it's my understanding we do have speakers.
Yes, sir. Our first speaker will be Stephanie Guttermson.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Council. I know I give you guys a lot of grief, but I want to commend you for this bill. I have nothing to say other than you guys did a really good job in writing this. The only addition I would suggest is also amending Section 27-8, Penalties and Relief, to include some additional penalties or methods of seeking relief for LGBTQ people. under this new legislation. I feel like that it would be in line with hate crime laws, and since that's the only addition I want to make and suggestion I want to make, I will yield my time to the rest of the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next person will be Timothy Tutt. Mr. Tutt, you may begin. Okay, we will. Oh, are you there, Mr. Tutt? No, I don't believe so.
Yes, I am.
Oh, you are,
can you
yes.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Go ahead and begin, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Council President Katz. Thank you, Councilmember Glass, for introducing this important LGBTQ Bill of Rights, and thanks to all of the members of the Council for your unanimous support of this legislation and for hosting this hearing on 2820. My name is Tim Tutt. I'm the Senior Minister of Westmoreland Congregational Unit Christ in Bethesda, and I support this bill. Westmoreland, as a local congregation, and our denomination, the United Church of Christ, both have long supported persons who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and or queer. The UCC first called for full protection under the law of LGBTQ persons in 1969. The UCC called for equal marriage rights for same-sex couples in 1996, and the denomination called for affirmation, protection, and inclusion of transgender persons in 1998. Westmoreland Church, as a community of faith here in Montgomery County, voted in 1999 to be affirming of and welcoming to persons of all sexual orientations, and later expanded that statement to include persons of all gender identities, and the congregation works diligently for marriage equality in our state as well. As a person of faith who is also a citizen in a pluralistic democracy, I am aware of the constitutional separation of religion and government, and I am aware that not all religious tenets make for good public policy. But in this instance, however, my belief and the affirmations of our congregation and of our denomination, the belief that all people are created in the image of God and are gifts to creation, and the purpose of this legislation, which is to make sure that LGBT persons are fully included in healthcare, nursing, and personal care facilities. Those beliefs and the tenets of this bill run parallel to each other. That is a good thing. Honestly, the theological language of affirmation and blessing that we in the church use and the governmental language of rights and legal protection that this legislation uses are really the same human sentiments, which are calling us all to honor, accept, include, affirm, protect, and respect one another equally and with dignity.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it very much. The next participant, please excuse me, Mr. or Ms. Kofa, would you please begin your testimony? I cannot pronounce the first name. My apologies. Okay, I don't know that they're still on the line. Okay, we will move on to Chazobam Wagwu.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Thank you, council members, for introducing this bill. I agree with this bill, as I believe that, especially in health settings, they should not be on the end of receiving any bigotry or discrimination because of who they are. I do hope that the council strongly considers expanding this bill to other types of businesses and just making that very explicitly clear, expanding discrimination education beyond the walls of traditional institutions like businesses and public schooling, and really making this a community initiative. I think that it's important for community members themselves that are provided tangible ways in which they can challenge their own implicit bias towards members of the LGBTQ+I community, and receive tools that they can ensure that every member of the community, of their community, is welcome and safe when being their authentic selves. And I definitely agree that this must be reflected in the training and education of folks that are working in these spaces that are outlined by this bill, and even stretching beyond to the public education section. Thank you again, and I yield my time.
Thank you very much. Mr. James Stowe is our next speaker. Go ahead, Mr. Stowe.
Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
All right, very, very good. First of all, good morning all to our council members. Let me start again by saying good afternoon. You've already had your morning. So good afternoon to all of you. Delighted to be with you again. Want to not take too much of your time this morning. Got a lot of speakers, I know. Just to simply say that the county executive administrations are in full support of Bill 2820. I want to make sure that persons are aware that we indeed wish to extend opportunities to all residents of Montgomery County in all aspects of their lives, that every single person deserves and has earned that right as a member of our community. And so we just champion that on every turn. We need to also remind council again, as we continue to add new human rights laws to our Department of Office of Human Rights. Obviously, we continue to have issues of ensuring that we can adequately give the kind of attention to new cases and new complaints as they come to us. We always endeavor to do our very, very best to treat every person with dignity and respect, and also supply timely responses to their complaints. So we simply would add that. There were a couple of issues we had from a legal standpoint. We've identified those in our written testimony and also suggested some possible change language. And so we would just to commend that to you for your attention. We also want to congratulate again Councilmember Glass for bringing this forward and all those who have signed on to this important bill, and look forward to doing all we can to be supportive as it begins to be going through the process of fine-tuning and then toward implementation if passed. Stand ready for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Stowe. The next speaker is Nancy Carr.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Carr, Director of Communications for AARP Maryland. We have about 865,000 members across the state, including several thousand in Montgomery County. We estimate that 3 out of 4 adults age 45 and older who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender say they're concerned about having enough support from family and friends as they age, and they are worried about how they will be treated in long-term care facilities. We did a landmark study in 2018 called Maintaining Dignity, a survey of LGBT adults 45 and older. 34% are concerned that they're going to have to hide their identity in order to have access to health care. And 76% of respondents are concerned about having adequate family or social supports to rely on as they age. Although the title of the study says LGBT, transgender, and gender-expansive adults are also among the respondents to the survey, and they're worried about their safety in care facilities. 67% fear neglect, 60% anticipate verbal or physical harassment, 61% expect to face limited access to services, and 52% says they will be forced to hide or deny their identity. Access to safe long-term care and health care from community providers is of dire concern to the LGBTQ community and to AARP Maryland. And for that reason, we ask for a favorable vote, and we thank Councilman Glass for his leadership.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you. This closes this public hearing. The next item that we have is item number 7, and this is a public hearing on Bill 2920, Taxation, Payments in Lieu of Taxes, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority property, WMATA, established. This bill would require the Director of Finance to negotiate a payment in lieu of taxes for certain property leased from WMATA, establish the amount of the payment in lieu of taxes, and generally amend the law governing payments in lieu of taxes. A joint government operations / Fed Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee work session is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, September 16th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the Council's consideration should do so by the end of business day, September 11th. And I do understand there are speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, that's correct. The first speaker would be Michael Coveu.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for hearing us today. I'm going to try and get through 6 or 7 minutes testimony by hitting the high points. I think it was just sent to you recently. As the recent housing preservation study points out, affordable housing units near transit are at greatest risk of being lost. Addressing affordable housing issues in the county is a complex, multi-layered problem, one that involves thoughtful choices that use our public funds as wisely as possible. There are no easy answers, but a main priority of the executive has been to find ways to provide more affordable housing across a broader range of affordability for county residents. From reading Bill 29, it's not quite clear to us what the goal is or how the goal can be achieved in a way that provides sufficient financial resources for our infrastructure needs. The county executive is concerned that this bill would forego 15 years of property taxes to subsidize market rate development. In the bill, there's no requirement for either large numbers of affordable units or a broader range of affordable units. For the subsidy being provided, we're not getting anything that wouldn't be provided anyway in the course of development necessarily. And given the projected number of market units needed, there's no lack of zoning in the metro station areas in order to accommodate the units. And it makes no difference whether the units are on the metro land or across from metro land, except that now units on metro will be exempt from property taxes. Units on metro will be exempt from property taxes. There's no evidence that this subsidy is required. If you look around the region, our competitors have their highest taxes on metro sites, and taxes are substantially greater than in Montgomery County. In fact, if property taxes were the key to development, we would have won the development battle a long time ago because we are lower than surrounding jurisdictions. There's no evidence that owners will lower their rents as a result of this bill. There's not any evidence that explains why people aren't building on metro sites or where there is any evaluation of demand for these sites at all. There's no requirement.
Mr. Covello, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Casey Anderson. Mr. Anderson, go ahead and begin.
I'm here, but I'm not on camera. Susan, can you activate my video?
That wouldn't be me. I can see if the other folks can do that for you.
I'm trying to start video, but
no one does video for the.
Yeah. Okay, my bad.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is Casey Anderson, Chair of the Planning Board. I think that the testimony you just heard from the county executive's representative really illustrates, I think, some of the fallacies in thinking that many people have about real estate development in general. I think that there's a widespread perception that developers are banging down the door, cannot wait to develop in the county, that the more density that's available, the high-rise construction, high-rise apartment buildings in particular, are immensely profitable, and therefore that we can simply wait until people are ready to meet our terms. And I think the market is speaking very loudly and has been for a number of years that that's simply not the case. What we've seen, not only in the case of Grosvenor, which obviously is one of the main reasons that this bill has been introduced, because we're trying to deal with a situation where the development partner WMATA is selected to develop at the Grosvenor Metro has concluded they can't sustain high-rise construction on top of the metro site. But we have been waiting for over a decade since the adoption of the White Flint plan to see more development occur then. And what we have encountered is not just one or two developers or property owners, but every single property owner after Federal Realty developed Pike and Rose and JBG developed North Bethesda Market has concluded that the cost of high-rise construction exceeds the profitability of high-rise construction. And that might not be anyone's concern other than people in the real estate business, except that there's a strong need not only for more housing units, and I'd remind everybody that housing is in fact infrastructure, just like schools and roads are infrastructure. Housing provides infrastructure that's needed to give people a place to live, for the workforce to meet the demands of our economy, and for human
Mr. Anderson, so sorry, Mr. Anderson, your time is up.
But this subsidy is necessary in order to make it break even over the long term.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next speaker is Victoria Leonard.
Hi, my name is Victoria Leonard, and thanks for the opportunity to testify. I'm with the Baltimore Washington Laborers District Council, which is an affiliate of LIUNA. We represent more than 7,500 members across D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. As discussed, this bill provides a pilot for high-rise construction on WMATA properties in Montgomery County. LIUNA suggests making the bill stronger to protect the county's interests by including conditions that will support high road development. A high road development project is one in which workers are paid a family-supporting wage and contractors are licensed, bonded, insured, and abide by wage and hour laws. Toward that goal, LIUNA suggests the following be added to the bill. Number one, that all contractors and subcontractors working on the project comply with prevailing wage requirements like they must on other public works projects, have no violations of wage and hour laws in the preceding 3 years, are licensed, and that the project developer has copies of the licenses on file, and have general liability insurance and surety bonds, and that the project developer has copies of these certificates on file. Number two, that the project developer provide any records requested by the county to enforce these requirements. And number three, that failure to comply with any of these requirements would result in the termination of the pilot. We believe that these conditions should also be applied to future projects receiving county subsidies to ensure that taxpayer dollars support high road development. A copy of our suggested additions were attached to the testimony I submitted by email, and we also shared these last week with lead bill sponsor, Councilmember Reamer. Thank you for the opportunity to share the thoughts of LIUNA.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tom Clark.
Thank you, Council President Katz, for the opportunity to testify on Bill 2920. My name is Tom Clark. I represent the 10,000 members of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 26. Roughly 800 of our members are county residents. The IBW believes that this bill can be strengthened by including conditions that will support high road development and eliminate the potential for illegality like wage theft. Wage theft happens a lot in construction. One of the worst culprits is Power Design, an electrical contractor. Power Design's business model is simple: low bid everyone, steal wages from its employees, and ignore licenses requirements. Power Design has engaged in wage theft right here in Montgomery County. In 2015, Power Design was sued for wage and hour violations at the Naval Exchange Project in Bethesda. Power Design settled that case in 2016. On another occasion, Power Design has used unlicensed electricians right here in Montgomery County at Ripley East in 2019. Power Design subbed out the work to a company with no business license, no master's license, and no record of them even existing. And next door in Washington, D.C., in this very calendar year, Attorney General Carl Racine ordered Power Design to pay $2.75 million as part of a wage theft and worker misclassification case. Council, when taxpayer dollars are used to support economic development projects, I think it's good public policy to ensure high road development occurs, that bad actors like Power Design cannot win work, and that the developers are held accountable. On behalf of the IBW, I ask that this bill include conditions to ensure these things happen. We have provided our suggestions to Councilman Reamer, the lead sponsor of this bill, and I look forward to working with him and the rest of the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Lee Gochman.
Thank you, President Katz, for giving me the opportunity to testify today. My name is Lee Gochman, and I'm here with you today because I strongly support this legislation, and I want to thank all 8 council members who signed on as sponsors. The reason is that this tax abatement program can be vital in increasing Montgomery County's housing supply. Now, we all know that the county's population is growing faster than we can build housing. In fact, I recently heard that about 9,000 people locate in the county each year, yet we're only adding about 2,000 housing units annually. Incremental increases are indeed helpful, but we need creative approaches to deliver more substantial results. And this bill takes that approach. The reality is that construction costs continue to rise due to a number of factors, and building over a metro station is even more costly as builders work to accommodate WMATA's structure and infrastructure requirements. At the same time, metro stations are the optimum sites for high-rise multifamily buildings. This bill provides a significant incentive to develop buildings that are 8 stories or higher, and at the same time it keeps the developer's costs down, which can translate into lower rental costs for tenants. Now, I've heard people say that the county will lose much-needed revenue if this bill passes, but that's not the case because WMATA doesn't pay property tax to the county. You certainly can't lose what you never had. In fact, the county will actually see a net gain in revenue from this proposal due to increased collections from such sources as additional income tax, impact fees, and recordation taxes. And if I could be personal here, as a member of the millennial generation, I have a special interest in this bill. I teach a weekly course on ways to make a first-time home purchase more affordable with the help of a variety of programs. And most of the attendees are millennials. And while my course is focused on home ownership, the need for affordable housing is applicable to rental housing as well. We need to give young people the tools they need to thrive, including affording a decent place to live. The greater supply of housing, the more reasonable costs will be. And the 15% MPDU requirement means that each high-rise building will substantially increase the number of available affordable apartments.
Mr. Gotchman, your time is up.
Thank you for considering my position.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jacob Sesker.
Hi, my name is Council President Katz and all council members. My name is Jacob Sesker. I'm an economic and public affairs consultant based in Brunswick, Maine. I'm pleased to testify today on behalf of my client, 5 Squares Development. Bill 2920 will provide a much-needed boost to development at a limited set of uniquely important locations in the county, metro stations. Today, I submitted a full report regarding the future fiscal and economic impacts of the first phase of development at Strathmore Square, a predominantly residential mixed-use high-rise development at Metro. The project faces a feasibility gap, which arises because the high cost of vertical construction isn't supported by market rents and because redeveloping a large suburban site for TOD requires a large upfront investment in infrastructure and public benefits. Bill 2920 would close that gap and allow this shovel-ready project to proceed. The economic impact of doing so is all about jobs, jobs, jobs. While the unemployment rate in the county has surged from 2.8% in March to 8.9% in May, this project will create approximately 600 jobs per year during the 2-year construction phase. My fiscal analysis focuses on the relative annualized impact of the first phase of development, and I concluded that the project will generate a fiscal surplus. Annual recurring revenue impacts are estimated at $1.35 million compared to $850,000 in annual recurring expenditures, a difference of $500,000. This does not include one-time revenues such as the impact tax revenues, $4.25 million in the first phase alone and $20 million at full build-out of the development that can be used to pay for capacity-adding projects in Montgomery County. Wrapping up, these findings are consistent with what we already know, that the high cost of transforming a suburban location into a TOD is an impediment to development, but that once it is built, the county's cost of serving the compact development in smaller households is usually more than offset by the recurring revenue. I look forward to working with you this fall as you continue your deliberations on this important bill. Thank you, and I hope that you all have a restful recess.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Al Okonski.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Al Okonski. Rosanna and I live in Montgomery County at 10500 Rockville Pike, across from the Grosvenor Strathmore Metro Station. We experience the advantages of well-planned residential density development daily. The condominium we own is in a high-rise tower. We use the metro from there with our neighbors. We appreciate the amenities we have nearby, and we look forward to further well-planned development, more neighbors, and more amenity choices. We're always in favor of encouraging development and density along metro corridors, and we believe our neighbors are too. We would like to see it all happen much faster than it is happening. Our position is well-planned metro station high-density project online sooner will bring more neighbors sooner and more new amenities sooner. Roseanne and I recognize that this density along the metro has first cost disadvantages, especially compared to developing remote or undeveloped locations. That's a whole nother discussion. We appreciate this bill's financial incentives. They're designed to mitigate some of those disadvantages and make projects more viable to get more density near more metro stations in the metro corridor. We think it is money well spent. Furthermore, Roseanne and I can see proposed near-term incentives will be offset to some degree as new metro station vicinity projects are occupied and more residents generate more activity and more tax receipts. In addition, we believe this bill and transit-oriented development are part of the housing supply solution. It's well known that the housing supply problem is a challenge to the county. If this bill passes, it would increase the county's supply of affordable housing in the right places, and the more units built, the greater the affordable housing supply.
Mr. Okonski,
Please
your time
count
is up.
us as supporters of
Your
the
time
bill.
is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Andy Altman.
Hello?
Hello, you may begin.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. President Katz, Vice President Hucker, and members of the County Council, I'm Andrew Altman, a co-founder of Five Squares Development with Ron Kaplan. We are the developers of the Grosvenor Strathmore Metro site, a development with the potential for over 2,100 units of housing. Ron Kaplan is well known to the County Council and a longtime Montgomery County resident and real estate developer who led the development of Symphony Park and Clarksburg Premium Outlets. It is with tremendous enthusiasm that we support Council Bill 2920 and ask for your support of this landmark bill. We applaud the Council's progressive and far-reaching commitment to transit-oriented development, and we want to especially thank Council members Hans Riemer and Andrew Friedson for their leadership in putting together and introducing this bill. In my prior positions, I was the Director of Planning for Washington, D.C. under Anthony Williams, and I was the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development for the City of Philadelphia. I can share with you that this type of legislation is exactly what we did to great success in stimulating development. Simply put, but for this legislation, Montgomery County's goal is to promote high-density growth in metro locations and specifically to implement the Grosvenor Strathmore Minor Master Plan Amendment that the Montgomery County Council and Planning Board unanimously approved in 2017 would not be feasible due to the prohibitive economics of building high-rise projects. The lack of new high-rise construction at metro sites in Montgomery County speaks loudly to how critical this legislation is, and we commissioned an independent analysis from WZHA consultants that concluded that high-rise residential projects at Grosvenor Strathmore would not be feasible but for this tax deferral. Crucially, this legislation can be achieved at no fiscal impact. As you heard from Jacob Sesker, who we commissioned, there's a net positive fiscal impact to the county. With this legislation, we are prepared to access the pilot benefit as soon as the legislation is adopted. We've been working over the past 5 years to advance the development of Strathmore Square, including having obtained all site approvals from the County Council and Planning Board, completed a joint development agreement with WMATA, and are under construction on an extension to the existing WMATA parking garage, which will be completed in 2021. This legislation will generate significant public benefits, including 15% MPDUs, a 1.25-acre open space, new bike lanes, and cultural amenities in partnership with Strathmore Music Center. We request that the Council support Bill 2920. We believe this is groundbreaking for a suburban jurisdiction. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Shruti Bhattacharya.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shruti Bhattacharya, and I'm the chair of Sierra Club Montgomery County Group. Thank you, Council President Katz and council members for giving me this opportunity to speak in favor of Bill 2920. Sierra Club's number one priority is to address climate change quickly and aggressively. Montgomery County has transformed over the past several decades from a sleepy bedroom suburb into a vibrant, urbanizing community with well over 1 million residents. Our location is one of the nation's most thriving regions, gives our county the opportunity and responsibility to make a substantial contribution to addressing climate change. By designing and implementing smart policies and programs in the realms of transportation, housing, and land use, our county can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to climate change. Sierra Club enthusiastically supports Bill 2920 to expand housing at metro stations through an extension of property tax abatement for high-rise development in such locations. This legislation will be an important instrument for the county in addressing climate change and will contribute to 3 key Sierra Club housing objectives, all of which are aimed at addressing climate change. First, encourage more total housing in the county, encourage most, at least 80% new housing units to be located within walking distance of transit stations, and encourage more housing that is affordable, especially within walking distance of transit stations. We are glad to show our support for this legislation. Thank you to Councilmember Hans Riemer and all the co-sponsors of this legislation for introducing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tina Slater.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Tina Slater, speaking as an individual in support of Bill 2920. Some people have asked about the tax break for developers. Well, currently, WMATA does not pay property taxes on the land it owns at metro stations. Therefore, this land generates no tax money, and giving developers a property tax break for the first 15 years will therefore cost no net loss. Why do we need to incentivize development? We need it to encourage more housing in the county. Most of the new housing units we build should be located near transit. WMATA says that they have the capacity for 8,600 residential units on all its properties located in our county. And if 15% of these units are MPDUs, that's 1,200 to 1,300 affordable units, mixed income, near transit. Why build on top of a metro station? This will help us address climate change. People living near metro are more likely to commute by transit instead of driving, and the transportation sector generates the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions. Finally, the passage of this bill will be a win-win on many fronts. Building these high-rises will bring more customers for retail, restaurants, and other business near metro, thereby boosting the local economy. Driving less helps address climate change. Transit-friendly, affordable housing promotes equity, and after 15 years, the county would begin collecting property taxes. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Jane Lyons.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, President Katz and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jane Lyons, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Coalition for Smarter Growth. Bill 2920, as you've heard, encourages transit-oriented development by providing a 15-year property tax abatement for high-rise construction on land leased from WMATA. Increasing the supply of housing on top of metro stations is key to meeting housing demand without putting new cars on the road. This approach will help the county meet its climate, economic development, and housing goals. Multiple housing construction projects on Montgomery County's metro stations have either been delayed, canceled, or scaled back due to the financial difficulties. Rents are often not enough to cover high construction costs, especially outside of downtown Bethesda. Development on WMATA property can also face additional costs due to parking replacement practices and engineering challenges. High-rise construction provides the most benefit at metro stations. More homes means more metro riders, more transit revenue, and more permanently affordable housing. This bill is expected to incentivize up to 8,600 units, including 1,300 affordable units through the MPDU programs set aside. We especially appreciate that this bill is part of a larger housing strategy from the council, considering short-term housing needs with rental assistance and long-term housing needs by supporting both new market rate and subsidized housing, as well as affordable housing preservation. This is a big issue, and we need all strategies in order to tackle the housing crisis. Therefore, we urge you to support Bill 2920 as a long-term, cost-effective way to catalyze more housing and economic development opportunities at metro stations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Nina Albert.
Good afternoon, Council President Katz and other members of the County Council. My name is Nina Albert. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate and Parking at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. WMATA, or Metro, owns property at many of its metro stations throughout Montgomery County, and we seek to develop them into mixed-use transit-oriented developments, or TOD. As others have stated, TOD encourages transit use. It also promotes sustainability and a more affordable cost of living. Montgomery County has long wanted TOD, demonstrated most recently by approvals for plans at Bethesda, Grosvenor Strathmore, and Forest Glen metro stations, not to mention the county's own offices located at Rockville and Wheaton metro stations. But until the introduction of this bill, the cost of implementing TOD had yet to be solved. Passage of this bill will accelerate TOD for several reasons. As again mentioned by others, the cost of high-rise or steel construction exceeds what current market rents can support. This legislation will create property tax savings for the developer to redirect into the cost of steel construction. Also, development on metro property is typically more expensive because transit infrastructure needs to be built or station access maintained as part of the project. Again, this legislation offers a solution to the higher than normal cost of building on metro property. Finally, one of the stated goals of the legislation is to create more housing, including more affordable housing. High-rise development in and of itself achieves more housing, and to the extent that there is remaining pilot funding after the cost of infrastructure and or high-rise development are covered, funds could be used to support deeper levels of affordable housing in the project. In summary, WMATA has 9 metro stations with developable land in Montgomery County that could deliver a total of 8,600 new residential units and approximately 2.5 million square feet of new commercial space. These developments are estimated to yield approximately 4 million new transit trips a year and
Ms.
divert
Albert,
as many
Ms. Albert, your time is
vehicle
up.
trips.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. We're going to close the public hearing. The next public hearing that we have is agenda item number 8, and this is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the Housing Opportunities Commission FY21 capital budget and an amendment to the FY21 through 26 capital improvements program in the amount of $2,800,000 for the Housing Production Fund. Action will be scheduled at a later date. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the Council's consideration should do so by the end of business day, August the 5th. And I understand there are speakers for this public hearing.
That's correct. Our first speaker is Mary Kolar.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Kolar, and I'm testifying on behalf of Montgomery Housing Alliance. As you well know, Montgomery County faces a critical shortage of affordable housing, especially housing affordable to low-income households. In order to address this crisis with the necessary scope, MHA calls on the Council to enact a comprehensive housing plan. MHA's top priority is ensuring robust resources for the Housing Initiative Fund. County investment in housing development must include new dedicated resources for the HIFs and affordable housing, and the intent of the HIF must be preserved. To that end, we urge county officials to meet the commitment of investing at least $150 million in the HIF annually by 2022. We hope for a plan that includes the following components. 1, at least $100 million in bond financing dedicated equally to affordable housing with an immediate prioritization of, but not restriction to, the Purple Line Corridor and to an HOC production fund. 2, implementation of a revolving acquisition fund such as the proposed $10 million Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund, which will provide short-term acquisition financing for affordable housing preservation. 3, implementation of automatic and full payment in lieu of taxes for nonprofit affordable housing providers. 4, a collaborative process among the Council, administration, nonprofit housing providers, and other stakeholders to plan an approach to housing funding in FY22 and future years. We appreciate the Council's commitment to affordable housing programs and unanimous affirmation of the COG housing targets. To achieve these targets, the county needs a bold commitment of resources. After the county acts on a $50 million bond for the HOC Production Fund, the Council must also pass a $50 million bond for the HIF as soon as possible after recess. We strongly urge the Council to advance a comprehensive plan that generates critically needed resources to ensure that all Montgomery County residents have homes they can afford. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Stephanie Guttormson.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me again. As far as this housing bill is concerned, I would just like to point out a couple of facts for the council to consider when trying to develop a more comprehensive plan. Hopefully one that is funded better than what the appropriation currently calls for. The first fact is that across the United States, for every single unhoused person, there are 6 empty homes. So the notion that there isn't enough housing is a fallacious one. It's one that is driven by manipulation of markets. The housing already exists. There's plenty of empty apartments and empty homes to put these people in. It's a matter of simply giving it to them. If you're curious if that kind of policy has been enacted before, it has in Helsinki, Finland. They solved their unhoused persons crisis by simply giving them homes unconditionally. So it's certainly possible. I would also point out that it is cheaper to provide them permanent housing than it is to do literally anything else. So you might want to look at that when you're looking at how you're spending my and everyone else's tax dollars. Maybe consider just giving people homes because it's a basic human need. Basic human needs aren't things that people should be able to make money on. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next, that wraps up our speakers, sir.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. I just wanted to provide an update as much for my colleagues as for everyone following this appropriation. Initially, we were going to vote on this appropriation today. It's been through an extensive process, beginning in the budget process this spring. However, we had initially drafted this as a capital budget amendment, and upon further discussion with the executive branch, we think it would be best as an operating budget appropriation within the HIF. So as a result, we're going to not take action on this item today, and we're going to introduce and hopefully act on a special appropriation to achieve the exact same goal as soon as possible. There's a small chance we could actually have it ready tomorrow, and then again, rather than acting right now, we would act tomorrow. If that's not possible, then we'll do it as soon as we possibly can. But thank you to my colleagues for all of your collaboration on this important initiative, and we really are on the verge of doing something very, very important and very special. So I look forward to working this through with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. The next item that we have is agenda item number 9. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $355,000 for permanent supportive housing for veterans and unsheltered adults. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. It is my understanding, Ms. Kennedy, that there are no speakers for this hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
So the public hearing is now closed, and this is an action item. So is there a motion?
I motion, but Mr. President, can I just say something real quick regarding testimony?
Yes.
I just want to state for the record that a number of people provided video testimony for this particular item, namely John Mendez and David King. And because of some technical issues, I don't think we were able to share that video, but just want to note for the record that video testimony was provided by Bethesda Cares.
Very good. And was that a motion as well?
It was.
Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Glass, seconded by Councilmember Rice. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes. All those I don't see any speakers. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. And this carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next is agenda item number 10. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget, COVID-19, Human Services and Community Assistance non-departmental account in the amount of $20 million for COVID-19 response, rental assistance, and eviction and homelessness prevention. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, are there speakers for this hearing?
Yes, sir. Our first speaker is Rose Martin.
For my first opportunity, thank you for my first opportunity to address you directly. My name is Rose Morton, and I'm the Chair and Veterans Representative for the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless Consumer Advisory Council. We advise MCCH to ensure that programs are being guided by current and former individuals who use or have used those services. The council saved lives this year when it funded COVID testing at the shelters and at aggregated living sites. County funding also helped to purchase tablets so that clients could virtually communicate with their case managers, demonstrating that the county is active in moving the homeless towards self-sustainable living, even during a global pandemic. And we cannot stop now with so many people living on the edge of homelessness. Housing assistance and rent stabilization for the homeless, those at risk, those who need help with longer-term affordable housing, receive components in community recovery from this and its economic impacts. Even before the pandemic, 23 million people in low-income households paid more than half their income in rent, and I call these gap people. Gap people go back to work but can't afford bus or gas because they haven't worked in a long time or they had to appropriate for diapers. Gap people have just spent 2 weeks in the hospital and were let go from their essential job. Gap people make just above the guidelines and lose their child care subsidies, who now can't afford child care with what they're making. Now they must choose to stay home without income or child care to get back to work. Their work record is stained, and it could be months before they could get subsidized child care again. On top of that, they have to pay for extra food that was provided by subsidized care. Our gap people cannot win for losing, it seems, and this was before COVID. Now, the Latinx community is a little over 8% of the total state population, but is 26% of Maryland cases. African Americans account for 29% of the state's population, but make up almost 41% of Maryland deaths. These disproportionate numbers are being played out in my building complex, my home, my family, my community. When families spend most of their income on rent, it is harder to save. It could be nearly impossible if their program... I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, your time is up, but thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mongo Nkoma. Mr. Nkoma? Hello, are you there, sir? Okay, it looks like we're having some audio issues there, so we'll move on to Rosa Manueles.
Rosa Manueles, ¿puede presentar su testimonio?
Hola, mi nombre es Rosa Manueles. Soy miembro de Casa Maryland. Vivo en Silver Spring.
Siga, por favor, haga todo el testimonio.
Sí, perdí mi trabajo el 20 de marzo. El apartamento donde yo vivo me han mandado...
No se escucha, por favor, siga. I've lost the sound. I cannot hear her.
Okay, let's see if we can, if Mr. Nkoma is there, and maybe he could get his audio to work as well. Otherwise, we may have to come back and see if we can get this picked up at a later time.
Señora Rosa Manueles, alguien más va a testificar en este momento. Le van a dar tiempo para que regrese a leer su testimonio.
Mr. President, I don't see either one of those, Mr. Nkoma there anymore. Would you like us to come back to this public hearing when she can get her audio straightened out?
Why don't we try that, please?
Okay, We'll go on to, and I do understand, my apologies, Mr. Leventhal did join us. I know that public hearing is closed, but I didn't know if it would be appropriate for him to just say a few words.
Well, I texted, he and I have been very busy texting each other, and at this point, I believe he does not want to speak, but if Mr. Leventhal is on the call, we will certainly allow him 2 minutes to speak. George, are you there, and would you like to speak? I think he was also having other things to do today, which is not hard to believe. So if he decides to come back and give us his 2 minutes, we'll certainly allow that as well. So did we try again for agenda item 10 to see whether they're back on?
Sure.
Vamos a seguir, por favor. Señora Manueles, ¿está usted allá y puede hacer su testimonio ahora? ¿Aló? Rosa Manueles, ¿puede seguir con su testimonio? Recuerda, asterisco 6 para abrir el micrófono.
Council President and the rest of the council members, I would like to add that Rosa already submitted her testimony, and we have the translated version of it if you guys would like to hear it.
Okay. Do you have it now?
Yes.
Please.
Diane has it with her. Diane?
Yes, thank you. The interpretation, the English translation is very accurate to what the Spanish was intending to say. My name is Rosa Manueles. I'm a member of CASA of Maryland from Silver Spring. I'm here in support of more funding for rental assistance. I lost my job on March 20th. I used to work at a store that sold electronic accessories. Since then, I haven't been able to work. I've been looking, but there are no jobs. In the apartment complex where I live, they requested proof that I wasn't working, and I provided it to them. Now they have given me notice that I have until the 24th to pay the rent, or they will be sending me to court. I understand I owe money, but I don't have funds due to the pandemic, and I don't have the money to pay. I'm a single mom with 3 kids. The little I have to use for food, I can't allow my children to go hungry. Sometimes I have to give them food, and sometimes I can't, since we don't have enough to survive. I ask the council to have a conscience. I have 3 kids to take care of. I don't have a job, I don't have saving to survive, and I don't have money, the money that the management company is asking for. I've always been punctual with my rent, and it's stressful receiving the threats from the management company. I can't sleep thinking of what I have to feed my kids. How am I going to find work? How am I going to pay the rent? We are suffering and all around the world, but they don't see that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on, if someone can please make a note so that we can get in touch with her, so that we can certainly make certain that her family has food, and someone could please make certain that she's aware of how we are doing it, and so that there is not a problem with her family not receiving what is necessary for them to be receiving. So, yeah, if we could do that as well, please. Ms. Kennedy, are there any other public speakers for this public hearing?
No, sir. We are finished.
Very good. So this public hearing is now closed, and Councilmember Glass, I believe, has a motion.
I'd like to move this.
Second.
And it's been seconded by Councilmember Reamer. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. We are socially distancing even on the Zoom call. People are in between each other. It's not everybody in a line here. I don't know how that worked all of a sudden. The next item that we have is item 11, and this is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Department of Police Department of Correction and Rehabilitation, and the Sheriff's Office, FY20 Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, in the amount of $431,707 for the Byrne Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Grant Funding. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, I understand there are speakers for this hearing.
Yes, we have Stephanie Guttermson.
Hi again. Thanks for hearing me out. As usual, appreciate it. I wanted to let you guys know that I understand this money is supposed to be for COVID-related things. I would like there to be an amendment adding some transparency for the spending of this money, given that the money will be spent by the police and the sheriff's departments, which don't have the luxury of having the public's trust. They should be meant to report their spending on this publicly. And that's all I wanted to make sure you guys knew. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That is all we have for that public hearing, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. This is an action item as well. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Who was the second?
Craig Rice.
Okay. It was moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Rice. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. And when I look down to write who made the motion, I can't see who did the second. Perfect system I have here. Okay. The next item is agenda item number 12. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice in the amount of $260,961 for staffing and operating expenses. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, there are no...
No, we do. Yes, we do have speakers for this public hearing. Our first speaker is Stephanie Guttermson.
Sorry I keep showing up, everyone. But I'm pretty passionate about a lot of things, as you can tell. As far as this appropriation is concerned, I think the number is extremely low and doesn't do enough to address the creation and staffing and funding of this initiative. I would suggest that as part of your stated goal of creating a new public safety vision for Montgomery County, that you look into increasing the funding for this particular initiative by taking money from the police department for the fiscal year and move that money towards this initiative. As I mentioned, I think last week, violent crime is 4% of Montgomery County's crime, which means 96% of the police officers, frankly, aren't necessary to do that particular job. So it seems like you guys have a lot of room to increase the funding for this particular initiative via sacrificing some money from the police department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mark Wolf.
Thank you. My name is Mark Wolf. I live in Council District 1, and I'm testifying on behalf of Jews United for Justice in support of the proposed approximately $260,000 appropriation for staffing and operating expenses for the Office of Racial Equality and Social Justice. Thank you for your support of the appropriation, especially following the recent government operations meeting, when each of you expressed support for the work of the office and the need for more resources. Rabbi Laura Weiner writes, on the very first lesson of the Torah is, all human beings are created equal. This belief in equity compels action in response to discrimination, racism, and racial injustice. Decisions in local government are often made without consideration of the impact of all community members. This in particular goes for black and brown residents. These decisions affect education, economic opportunities, healthcare, transportation, housing, and other aspects of our county. The Office of Racial Equality, Equity, and Social Justice ensures that the needs of our diverse residents are considered in all local government decisions. The county acted wisely when it created the office in 2019, but an office needs funding. The appropriation under consideration supports the work that's critical to the office's success, including staff training and examination of policy, processes and procedures, and tracking and addressing departmental equity action plans and racial equity and social justice impacts. I respectfully urge the Council to approve the proposed $260,961 appropriation for staffing and operating expenses for the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That wraps up our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you all know, we have had a number of conversations regarding racial equity and social justice. Of course, the law, but also the implementation. One of the things that we discussed was basically the need for resources. And time and time again, we've asked Stephanie Ward as well as the administration to please let us know as they begin to evaluate what will it take to be able to implement the law. As everybody knows, also in August, we will start requiring the legislative impact notes as well. So on the council, we've also had to increase the capacity of our Office of Legislative Oversight in order to begin to fulfill this requirement. And so GO Committee had a great conversation about all of these issues, and we I think all of us feel very strongly that this is important and that we should go ahead and approve these funds. The recommendation here, or the request, is to invest about $160,961 towards personnel services for a program manager and an administrative specialist, $100,000 towards operating expenses to assist with the regulations, and as well as the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee community outreach events and additional training and support. I agree with some of the testimony that this is really the beginning. Obviously, as we are beginning the implementation, there will be a lot of assessments done to understand exactly what the capacity needed will be for this law. And so this is the beginning, and I fully expect that they will probably need to invest or leverage some of the investments that we already have in place to get this going. So I'm really pleased that this is before us, and I would like to make a motion.
Thank you. Let me close the public hearing first. The public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Navarro, would you like to make a motion?
I'll move that we adopt these funds for the Racial Equity and Social Justice Office.
And Councilmember Jawando has given me 2 fingers as well, so he gets the second. It has been moved by Councilmember Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Jawando. All those in favor, please raise your hand, and that is unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item we have is agenda item number 13. This is a public hearing on special appropriations to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Conference and Visitors Bureau, non-departmental account support for COVID-19 response, hospitality, and tourism support in the amount of $200,000. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, it's my understanding there are no speakers for this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
This public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Reamer, please.
Thank you. I'll move the appropriation. I know that Kelly Groff is available if there are any questions from my colleagues. This is an appropriation intended to help the hospitality sector rebound and leverage our terrific Conference and Visitors Bureau towards that goal.
Thank you. And Councilmember Friedson is doing the second. Is that correct? Yes. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous as well. Thank you. Next is agenda item number 14. This is a public hearing on special appropriations to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Community Engagement Cluster, Office of Community Partnerships, also known as OCP, in the amount of $296,436 for the 2020 Census Grant Program. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, it's my understanding there are no speakers for this hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
This public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Albornoz. All those in favor, please raise your hand. and that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is agenda item number 15. This is a public hearing on a resolution in support of mailing ballots to voters for the 2020 general election. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. It is my understanding that we do have a speaker for this public hearing. Is that correct, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, we do. That speaker is Shaizoban Wagwu.
Hello, thank you, County Council, for allowing me to be able to speak on this. So I guess as a brief overview about the, I support the resolution that we should be able to, the county should be able to advocate for mailing ballots. I think this is definitely reflective of the history of voting in this country. The framers intentionally excluded the right to vote from the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They decided that only 1% of their time be dedicated to even debating the vote, which is a shockingly brief consideration considering how important it is throughout our history and even more so now. And their inability to decide stemmed from their disagreement on who should have such rights. They, very much in their opinion, believe that the right to vote only be included for those who are wealthy, and that those who are poor aren't necessarily being able to have the conscience to be able to actually decide in their own interests. I think that expanding the vote and ensuring that folks are able to at least submit a mail-in ballot in light of this pandemic definitely does affirm that the County Council does really value that folks in this community do deserve a say in their local government, in their state government, and in obviously the general election. And that is the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you. We are going to close this public hearing. And Councilmember Albernaz, did you want to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we move the resolution forward, encouraging the governor to support mailing all ballots to all county constituents, all state residents.
And it's been seconded by Vice President Hucker. All those, I see no other speakers, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. The next item that we have is a public hearing on item number 16. This is a public hearing on a resolution in support of Indigenous Peoples Day. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. It is my understanding, Ms. Kennedy, that we do have a speaker for this?
Yes, yes, Shaizoban Wagwu.
Yes, hello again. Thank you, Council, for creating this resolution. I agree that this needs to happen and is long overdue. In Montgomery County, there's no formally recognized tribal nations to my knowledge. However, much of the land here, like the rest of this country, is indigenous land. There's definitely been an effort, and this move toward Indigenous Peoples Day is definitely an effort that's decades in the making. And I remember being in public school system and many instructors affirming that simply Columbus was the one that, quote unquote, discovered America, despite not even being in the physical location that he intended to conquer. I also agree with all points in the resolution with amendments. I believe that there definitely needs to be an active component of engaging with Indigenous folks to trace their roots back to the land that we stand on. It also should include systemic reparations in the long term for many of the Indigenous people that were pushed out of this area. The Potomac was never intended to be a wilderness for billionaires, and I think it recognizes that Indigenous Peoples Day should also continue to embrace the principles that the people who inhabited this land, that they embraced. This should also include forum with Indigenous leaders and organizers to understand how such actions can be carried out alongside county officials. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. We're going to close the public hearing, and Councilmember Navarro, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my colleagues for their support of this resolution that I drafted and introduced with your support. This is something that I wanted to do for a while. We got really busy working on racial equity and social justice legislation last year, And it sort of took a backseat, but I think more than ever, as it has been stated time and time again, we are right now engaged in a lot of very important work. Some of our work has to do with really significant pieces of legislation as well as budgetary decisions. And some of our work, for some people, seem to be symbolic in nature, but actually it carries a lot of weight. This particular one is one of those that, in my opinion, is very important, especially for our young people and our students. The resolution does include a clause asking the school system to also review their curriculum and the way that they present history. It is very important. It's also very important, at least for me personally, when I reflect upon the contributions of our Indigenous people. It is so critical that our young people understand the extraordinary contributions, the extraordinary legacy, the civilizations that were so strong here in the Americas, and the role that all of they played in our modern day society, but also the extraordinary, painful reality of how these nations were basically wiped out. And to glorify something like Columbus, like Christopher Columbus, and to glorify colonization, it really is not something that helps us move forward and promote racial equity and social justice in general terms. So this, again, I think it's a very important step forward. As of course you know, I was born and raised up until age 17 in Venezuela. We celebrated there Dia de la Raza, which is basically the day the races came together. And even growing up, the way that we learn history was very different than the way that it's taught here. So again, I think that this is an important step forward, and I thank my colleagues for their support, and I move that we adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Navarro. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Council Vice President Hucker. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously as well. The next item that we have is agenda item number 17. And this is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for the Department of Health and Human Services, Behavioral Health, and Crisis Prevention, and for Crisis Prevention and Intervention Services in the amount of $395,000 for the Montgomery County Hotline, as well as an amendment to the FY21 operating budget resolution 19-472, Section G, for the FY21 designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status, EveryMind. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. And it's my understanding there are no speakers for this public hearing. Ms. Kennedy, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President Katz. I will be very brief because I know we have an extremely long agenda, but this is a critical issue, a really important appropriation. I just wanted to highlight it quickly. $300,000 will be towards staffing up the crisis intervention hotline. When residents call, there should always be somebody on the other end of the line. Too often, unfortunately, because of staffing resources and the increased needs, those calls are up 25% during this crisis alone. We unfortunately are missing some of those calls, some of those texts. And when you miss a call or a text, when you're talking about crisis intervention, that's a matter of life and death. And there should always be somebody on the other end of the line. And then the $95,000 is out of general fund to expand the text hours into the morning hours. Last year during the budget, Councilmember Joando and I worked together, and the council was enthusiastically supportive of expanding the hotline into the evening hours, where there's increased social isolation and challenge, and this would build upon that, which was always the intention before the crisis, and has been exacerbated because of the crisis into the morning hours. So $300,000 out of CARES Act funding for additional support to meet the moment and the increased challenges that we face. $95,000 for general fund, so that we don't have to walk back the increased hours. Hopefully, this is part of our continued effort to expand those hours, which we hope eventually will be 24 hours. And really appreciate EveryMind, all the work and all the work of colleagues, particularly Council Members Joando and Alvarez, for working together on this issue. And I'd like to make the motion for approval.
It's been moved by Councilmember Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Jawando. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item that we have is agenda item number 18. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for COVID-19 Human Services and Community Assistance NDA in the amount of $7,545,590. And please pardon the way my pronunciation on this, for por nuestro salute bienestar, which is for our health and well-being. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, I know that we have speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Dr. Ana Maria Izquierdo Pereira.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to listen to us. It comes as no surprise that our Black and Brown sisters are inordinately affected by the COVID, and we are happy to be able to collaborate in this effort with government to make sure that they receive the care that they need and to ensure that the pandemic is controlled to the extent that we can. I think the importance of partnering with individuals that have been providing care in the community, that have the trust of the community and the know-how within a particular community is very important. And this appropriation will make sure that particularly in this case, the Latino community can be served effectively during this pandemic. I want to point out really fast the importance of the associated funds that will come for the testing from FEMA, and I think it's very important to bring it up because this cannot happen with the two sources of funding. But I really want to thank Gabriela Albornoz and Nancy Navarro for bringing us to the table and making sure that as a community we can tackle this crisis effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Margarita Hernandez Pissarro.
Señorita Margarita Hernández, ¿puede hablar?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Margarita Hernández Pissarro, estoy casada y tengo 2 hijos. He sido participante de diferentes programas de la Iniciativa Latina de Salud y además soy promotora de salud voluntaria. Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad.
¿Puede seguir si quiere?
Como todos sabemos, la enfermedad del COVID-19 está afectando a nuestra comunidad de manera muy drástica. La Iniciativa Latina de Salud, junto con sus promotoras, han sido de gran apoyo a la comunidad en estos tiempos difíciles, trabajando arduamente al brindar información acerca de los recursos existentes. Lamentablemente, esto no es suficiente. Estamos temerosos por no tener la información adecuada de cómo prevenir y manejar la enfermedad. Tenemos miedo de asistir a las clínicas, hospitales y de hacernos las pruebas por los altos costos y por las consecuencias que pueda tener por el estatus de cada uno. Muchas personas aún no saben a dónde recurrir y están limitadas a acceder a los servicios por medio del Internet, por lo cual acuden a nosotras, las promotoras, porque se sienten seguras al saber que somos parte de la comunidad.
Voy a seguir. I'm going to interpret this half now. Esta mitad voy a interpretar y luego usted sigue. Good afternoon. My name is Margarita Hernandez Pissarro. I'm married and I have 2 children. I've been a participant in various programs of the Latina Health Initiative, and also I'm a volunteer health promoter. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. As we all know, the COVID-19 disease is affecting our community in a very drastic way. The Latina Health Initiative, along with the promoters, has been of great help to the community in these difficult times, working hard to provide information about available resources. Unfortunately, it hasn't been sufficient. We're afraid because we lack adequate information about how to prevent and manage this disease. We also are afraid to go to the clinics, hospitals, and to take tests, take the test because of their high cost and the consequences they could have for the status of each one of us. Many people don't know where to go, and they are limited to those services that are available online. So they come to us, the promoters, because they feel safe with us, knowing that we're part of the community. Por favor, siga. Please continue.
Esto aún no ha terminado. Una persona me dijo, las secuelas que me ha dejado esta enfermedad me limitarán en muchos aspectos. ¿Qué haré? ¿A quién recurrir para sentirme confiado que saldré adelante con esto y que no ignorarán mi preocupación? En otro caso, una señora que se acercó a mí me dijo, me están dando medicinas para la ansiedad. Esto no es suficiente. Actualmente estoy ayudando a una madre que necesita asistencia con comida. Aún y cuando hay tantos recursos, ella no está informada por no saber leer y escribir. Yo le llamo para explicarle lo que tiene que hacer. Esta es nuestra nueva realidad. Como parte de la comunidad, no podemos ignorar estas preocupaciones. Necesitamos más programas que lleguen a nuestras familias. El programa Nuestra Salud y Bienestar nos da esperanza. En la Iniciativa Latina de Salud siempre están preocupados e involucrados por saber qué es lo que la comunidad necesita para poder ofrecerlo. Tienen experiencia en programas de educación, prevención y seguimiento. Me siento confiada de acercarme a las personas que integran estos programas porque tienen un personal que trabaja con profesionalismo y amor a su trabajo. Espero que por nuestra salud y bienestar este programa pueda ser una realidad. Muchas gracias por su atención.
This will go on.
Ms. Lavoy, just one moment. If you could, we're almost at 4 minutes, so if you could make it a little abbreviated, that would be appreciated.
Okay, voy a interpretar
Thank
en
you.
breve. Yes, this will go on. One person told me, I'm going to skip that one. Another person came up to me and said, they're giving me medicine for anxiety, but that's not enough. Right now, I'm helping someone who needs food assistance. Even when there's so many resources, she wasn't informed because she doesn't know how to read and write. In our community, in our new reality, as part of the community, we can't ignore these concerns. We need more programs that reach these families. The program, Our Health and Well-Being, gives us hope. The Latina Initiative, Health Initiative, is worried and concerned and involved in knowing what the community needs in order to be able to face it. I am confident that with approaching myself with these people, I'm confident in approaching these people because they work with professionalism and they love their work. I have hope that our health and well-being in this program can be a reality. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Norma Columbus.
Good afternoon. ¿Me oye?
Hello. You may
¿Me
begin.
oye?
Sí se escucha, señora. Puede proseguir, señora Colombo.
It's Norma Columbus. Oh my God.
We can hear
¿Aló?
you. We can
Sí,
hear you.
Okay.
sí se escucha y yo puedo
Okay.
interpretar si se necesita.
Good afternoon. My name is Norma Columbus, and I'm volunteer health promoter with the Latino Health Initiative of Montgomery County. Furthermore, not only do I identify with this particular community, but I have been advocate for the health of Latino in the county and increasing their livelihood and sense of belonging in the surrounding area. The program, Our Health and Well-Being, will be helped to fight the virus in our community because it seeks to provide education and research regarding the importance of keeping healthy and safe during the COVID-19. Through this program, individuals will be able to receive information and knowledge relating to the risk of the virus, as well as the benefits of sustaining a healthy and safe environment for their families. Most importantly, this program will assist individuals access health care. As we all know, access to health care is very limited in our community. Due to the growing Hispanic community, it is necessary for government agencies to have a personnel that speaks Spanish in order to be effective with all communication and educational methods. I would like to share just one of the many experiences I had as a health promoter in the recent time. I received a phone call from a community member, her family of 5 members, including 2 teenagers, all are living in a basement with 1 bathroom. They have no health insurance, no job, no money, or only they have the virus. I gave them information as to where they could get tested, how they can deliver food. Even myself, I delivered food. I got a mask for them, and I still keeping in touch with them.
Ms. Colombo,
I know there are many more families.
Ms. Colombo, I'm so sorry. Your time is up. But thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker is Omar Lazo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to talk today. I want to thank the council for everything they've done. Being a small business owner, I'm definitely very grateful for everything that's been done for us. I'm here as a resident and also a small business owner here in Montgomery County, and I'm here to obviously, give my testimony for the appropriation for nuestra salud y bienestar. I've been working a lot right now with food security, and through that, we're doing a lot with culturally appropriate foods. Mostly right now I'm working a lot in Germantown to provide food for these families. And through that network, you hear a lot of stories about people that have passed away or people that are extremely sick. And a lot of the times it's just from people that don't have access to healthcare, and also don't have, even if they have access to it, they're afraid of the monetary repercussions that come along with it when you don't have health insurance. I hear cases in my own, in my family, I had somebody that passed away that rented a room in a relative's house, that because they didn't have health insurance were afraid to go to the hospital. And by the time they got around to going to the hospital, it was too late. The person passed away. So you hear these horror stories, and you realize how prevalent it is in our community. And obviously, there's a lot that needs to be done. A lot of these, these members of our community are tax-paying members, but unfortunately, the federal government did not look out for them like they did us. And a lot of people didn't have any kind of support, any monetary support, and they're in a really tough situation. So I think, healthcare is definitely going to be something that's going to be make or break for the community, because I think if a lot of us can have access to that really vital healthcare, then we'll be able to kind of get through this. So I just wanted to give a little bit of my experience, and I know with the Latino community, it's something that you hear it every day. Every day you hear it, and there's more and more people around you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Lazo.
much.
Your time is up. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Astrid Jimenez.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to address the elected members of Montgomery County. My name is Astrid Jimenez. I am the Executive Director of Nueva Vida, a 21-year-old nonprofit organization. We are a health support network with a mission to inform, support, and empower Latinas and their families whose lives are affected by cancer. Our free programs range from outreach education, patient navigation, and mental and emotional support. Nueva Vida has strong ties with Montgomery County because through your grants, we've been able to serve the Latino population. Through our extensive outreach in Montgomery County, we've made a difference for over 1,000 Latinos through different health events. This community are disadvantaged and medically underserved women, mostly uninsured, with limited English proficiency from Central and South America with little or no resources. The population is extremely vulnerable right now, and the pandemic has exacerbated this condition. Our survivors are suffering from food insecurity and increased mental and emotional stress. We find ourselves doing all we can to provide some food and resources for them. Through our fundraising efforts and provision of emergency response grants, we have been able to minimally provide food and gift cards to these families to take care of basic necessities like medicine copay. Today, I am here supporting the special appropriation for our health and well-being, which would provide much-needed resources to the coronavirus-ravaged Latino population. And hopefully, through this bill, we could see some money allocated to feeding Latina cancer survivors. For us, Working in Montgomery County is not only about helping a vulnerable community that we're committed to serve, it is personal. Our lead patient navigator and cancer survivor resides here, and one of our founders, also a resident of Montgomery County, is a Latina psychiatrist that works for the Montgomery County government. Therefore, to us, working in this county is as personal as it gets. Thank you for your time and for the help you give the Latino community. We look forward to a continued relationship with the county and with you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Carmen Hernandez.
Señora Carmen Hernández, es su momento para dar su testimonio.
Carmen Jiménez, Hernández, perdón. Carmen Hernández.
¿Me escucha?
Sí, siga.
Me escucha, muy bien. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Carmen Hernández, trabajo para Impact Silver Spring como constructora de redes comunitarias. Me presento ante ustedes para apoyar los esfuerzos de los miembros del Consejo Nancy Navarro y Gabriela Albornoz en su solicitud de fondos para apoyar a la población hispana del condado durante los próximos 6 meses. Conozco de primera mano las necesidades e incluso la extrema pobreza de muchos residentes hispanos. He visitado sus hogares y he creado una relación cercana con ellos. La pandemia del COVID-19 ha sido una crisis que ha expuesto lo que les falta y ha expuesto su vulnerabilidad. No tienen ahorros, no tienen seguro de salud, no todos hablan el idioma inglés, viven en condiciones de hacinamiento y más de la mitad no tienen un permiso de trabajo. Reciben salarios que apenas son suficientes para pagar el alquiler y las necesidades básicas. Comparten además sus ingresos con familias en el extranjero. La comunidad latina es una de las más expuestas al contagio, ya que un alto porcentaje se considera esencial para el trabajo. Por estos motivos, agradezco que se considere la aprobación de la solicitud de financiamiento. Gracias por su atención a este asunto.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmen Hernandez, and I work for Impact Silver Spring as a community network builder. I stand before you to support the efforts of Council members Nancy Navarro and Gabriel Albornoz in their request for funds to support the Hispanic population of the county during the next 6 months. I know firsthand the needs and even the extreme poverty of many Hispanic residents. I have visited their homes and created a close relationship with them. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a crisis that has exposed what they lack and exposed their vulnerability. There are no savings. They do not have health insurance. Not everyone speaks the English language. They live in overcrowded conditions, and more than half do not have a work permit. They receive wages that are barely enough to pay their rent, basic needs, and they share their income with their families abroad. The Latino community is one of the most exposed to contagion, since a high percentage is considered essential for work. For those reasons, I appreciate your considering the approval of the funding request. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you very much. I'm going to check to see if Reverend Diana Rayo is here. I don't believe I see her, but there could be another number associated with her account. If she is there, she is our last speaker for this public hearing.
I believe she is right with Carmen Hernandez. They are using the same number.
Okay. She may begin then.
Señora Diana.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. First of all, I want to give thanks to the members of the council for the opportunity that you have given me to testify in favor of the funds for the Hispanic Latino community. My name is Diana Wing Ayarayo, and I am the pastor at Hughes United Methodist Church, El Buen Samaritano. We have been working in the last few months since COVID-19 with the 4th district, and for all this time we have learned that this pandemic has been really damaging and affecting a Latino vulnerable community. Actually, currently we have been helping families with food and other needs like PPE equipment and counseling and other kind of types of things. Our church is a community resource center, and we have been here for helping them. And so we have been directly working with the Latino community and primarily helping them with food and rent and utilities. Our program, our agency program is called Food on Our Plate, and this is distributed every week. And thanks to the council, and we have been able to do that, and also being connected with directly COVID-19 families that have been affected. So as a pastor and community leader, I know that we need our Hispanic Latino people to be aware of the delicate and dangerous situation that we are living right now. So we have many teams in the community that help spread the news and support to the community people. And these teams are working directly with many families in the area and different zip code area. So we have a lot of affecting children because they have jobless single parents. Therefore, United Methodist Church of Buen Samaritano highly support our council proposal for our health and well-being bill to expand, to get more funds to expand and sustain our Latino community needs. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. This public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Rice, please.
Thank you very much. Before folks move forward with the motion, I just wanted to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Almanos, who have worked hand in hand with me as I embark on trying to do something with our African American health programs centered around some of the challenges that we face here too. So just wanted to make sure that my folks in our African American community certainly know that, and want to appreciate and shout out Councilmember Duando, who's working alongside as well as we try and address those issues. But really just wanted to say thank you for your great work. It certainly serves as a guiding template for us in terms of some of the same things that we're looking to do within the African American community. So just wanted to thank you for your partnership. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank everybody who came to testify today. Really appreciate the time. Muchas gracias a las personas que vinieron a dar testimonio. La verdad es que aprecio mucho que han tomado su tiempo. I just want to, just say something about what we're doing here. The truth is that at the national level, we have seen how our Latino community and our Black community has been disproportionately affected by this pandemic. Montgomery County is no exception because we mirror the makeup of our nation and also the world. And I've been very proud to serve with my colleagues because if you break down in terms of demographic profiles, each council district has a large proportion of Latino residents, except District 1. But every single other council district has a large proportion of Latino residents. Mine just happens to have the largest proportion. And each at-large council member obviously represents all of these communities. And so from the very beginning, I have been really, really grateful to how each council member has zeroed in on the needs of these very vulnerable communities. And we do it because we care. We do it because we understand that it's important. But there's another component to this, which is the public health needs of our community in the race to address the spread of this virus. So it is so important that we zero in on the needs of our most vulnerable communities because it has an effect when we talk about public health on the entire county. And I want to absolutely thank Councilmember Albornoz. When we finally received the data that we have been asking for a while, it just became really clear that a lot of the things that we had been worried about and that we had worked so hard to address, unfortunately, those efforts had not been enough. And so, we quickly just huddled and said, we got to do something about this. It was very clear to me that it needed to be a systems approach that needed to be targeted, that needed to be scalable. And very quickly, we got together with first the county executive to let him know that this was imperative, but then second with our community leaders, right? It's just amazing how the Latino Health Steering Committee They have people like Mónica Escalante, Angela Sáenz, Ana María Izquierdo, Olivia Carter, Maria Gomez, Diego Uriburu, Grace Rivera Oven, and many others. The Latino Health Initiative that is led by Sonia Mora, who is just an extraordinary leader. Our staff, I know Berta Cersosimo from my office has been working around the clock, as well as Beth Schumann and Lee Cruz and Mayra Bayonera in Councilmember Albornoz' office. Everybody came together with the amazing Linda McMillan, and like in 9 days, came up with this initiative, which is an extraordinary template that, as Councilmember Rice mentioned, I reached out to him and said, this is the type of template that would also work in our Black communities, and this is how we need to do the work. I think that we've learned a lot during this pandemic. One thing I now am convinced is that this is how we need to approach these kinds of challenges. It has to be through a systems approach. It has to be through coming together with the community so that you can achieve that cultural and that linguistic proficiency that is so critical when you're trying to basically race against the clock. And so that's where we are today. And I will say this also for the record. I know that, this is a time-limited effort because, of course, of the funding that we are accessing. I very much am completely committed to making sure that this model continues, because I think in the end is what's going to give us the best results, and it's going to be the best use of our resources. So again, I want to thank all my colleagues, Councilmember Albornoz, the extraordinary community that has come together. This particular model includes enhanced communications, outreach and engagement, clinical follow-ups, testing and contact tracing, case management, funding to sustain and expand the community hubs that Grace Rivera Oven up in Germantown has done an amazing job. And it also establishes a Spanish language hotline, and also the development of the hiring of more health promoters, which is another way that we can capitalize and use our own resources in our own community to get this going. So again, thank you. It's been exhausting, but very exciting to finally get here. And the executive indicated to us, to Councilor Albornoz and I, when we met with him, that he was absolutely committed to supporting this initiative and providing the funding. And so I know that the Health and Human Services leadership, Dr. Poole, everyone is going to work to make this a model. And for us, I believe he's going to second, and it has other comments that he may want to make.
I've already gotten that word. It's been moved by Councilmember. It's been moved by Councilmember Navarro, seconded by Councilmember Albornoz. Councilmember Reamer wanted to speak, please.
I could wait until after Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer. I'll be brief. Councilmember Navarro said it so beautifully and eloquently. The two biggest indicators of COVID positive test cases and fatalities nationally are race and income level. And that is true here in Montgomery County as well. We've all known that the issues prior to COVID that led to public health disparities were going to be exacerbated, but we didn't know how bad it would be. And to Councilmember Navarro's point, when we heard about the shocking percentage of positive test cases, although going down across the board, but within the Latino community since June, clearly we knew we had a grave problem and had to act quickly. I in particular want to thank the Latino Health Initiative and all of the minority health initiatives for their remarkable work. And Councilmember Navarro named the people who are my friends, but they're also my heroes who have been working tirelessly for years, but in particular for the last 4 months, day and night, working with our community to help keep them safe and to help keep all of us safe across the entire county. And so it has been an honor to work with Councilmember Navarro and her team. I do want to especially acknowledge, as she said, again, Beth and Maida and Lily from my team who worked actively on this, and very much want to thank Linda McMillan, who in the midst of everything else that she's working on and so many other special appropriations, dealing with budget issues, who carved out the space and time to work with the executive branch and come up with a proposal that I think is something we can all be proud of. And I especially also want to thank Sonia Mora from HHS, who I know has worked day and night also for many years, but in particular over the last 9 or so days to help stand this up. And I do want to acknowledge Dr. Crowell, who is on this call, and thank the Department of Health and Human Services and the executive branch for your support of this initiative. And this is the perfect model, the perfect public-private partnership to engage the key stakeholders we have in our community, already have trust, already have a footprint, and be able to carry programs forward. And I look forward to working with Council Members Rice and Jawando and Navarro and all of our colleagues on the development of a very similar plan, which we will initiate as soon as possible within our Black community as well. And we also will be looking at issues within our Asian community too, which have been disproportionately impacted, especially from a mental health standpoint within COVID. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to all my colleagues. It's a good day here in Montgomery County when we support our most vulnerable residents and pursue the common good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reno.
Thank you. I'm really so happy to see this initiative coming forward and really pleased to support it. And just want to thank my colleagues, Council Members Navarro and Albanose, for bringing it to us. Since the earliest days of this crisis, I have been working to really seek information, push as hard as I can, and have accountability on critical response measures like testing and tracing and isolating. And we should have had a more aggressive approach along the way, but we're getting there. And I think this is a key component. I think when we look back on this COVID crisis, I think we're going to say that not only should local governments have very aggressive testing and tracing programs in place right from the outset, but they should have very significant targeted initiatives that are able to go deep into vulnerable communities, working with community partners. And of course, the community partners that we have here are the legacy of many years of public health investment and community clinics and support for nonprofits. So this is something we are uniquely capable of succeeding with, and I think it's going to be a really important step forward for our community response. And as we're heading towards the possibility of a potential resurgence of the virus, regionally, hopefully not locally, these kinds of measures are going to be ever more crucial. So I join my colleagues in supporting this strenuously, but also want to just express my appreciation. I think that the criticality of getting it right on testing and tracing, we just can't be understated. So it's been my pleasure to be working on those issues along the way, and I'm glad to see their relevance here. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand Mr. Klein, Andrew Klein, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Council President Katz, and thank you to the entire council for giving me a few minutes. County Executive is pleased and excited to partner with Council on this critical initiative to reach communities hit hard by COVID-19. I want to thank the Latino Health Steering Committee for their incredible effort and ability to work collaboratively at warp speed to move forward with this initiative. I also want to take advantage of the opportunity to acknowledge the tremendous contributions made by the Latino Health Steering Committee during the past 20 years of volunteer service on behalf of the Latino community. Having to step in to support the county is not new to them. We have tapped Sonia Mora, Director of the Latino Health Initiative, to lead this effort, and she reports directly to me and the county executive on this initiative. Much work has already been done with the Latino Health Steering Committee, and you will see later in your agenda our request for authorization of a non-competitive contract award to the Primary Care Coalition, which will allow us to quickly stand up expanded testing, clinical follow-up, and case management services for Latino residents. We're also finalizing a contract with Casa de Maryland to provide additional culturally competent contact tracers. The county executive is committed to prioritizing resources to the communities and populations that are most vulnerable to the virus, and this initiative is consistent with that strategy. We look forward to continuing our work with the Latino Health Steering Committee as we move into the implementation phase for our health and well-being. I want to thank Council Members Navarro and Albornoz. I also want to thank Linda McMillan for her tireless work with the Latino Health Steering Committee, with the executive branch, with the council, to make this a reality. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words about this.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Ms. McMillan, I understand you also have some information for us.
Yes, I just wanted to say that over the course of the week since introduction, there are a few amendments. They are included in the resolution that is in your packet right behind the cover sheet at pages 1 through 5. These amendments are the result of collaboration with the Latino Health Steering Committee and Council Members Albornoz and Navarro, and I will just go through them briefly with a summary so that you understand what changes have been made. The first is that since introduction, the total appropriation has been reduced by $1,949,475 in recognition that the costs of the contact tracing can be covered through FEMA reimbursement. Starting on the bottom of page 3 of the resolution, there is amended language that removes the dollar amount, but it continues to outline the goals and requirements for the contact tracing component. And you've heard the commitment of the executive branch to move forward with that using a framework of FEMA reimbursement. For the community hubs, at the middle of page 4, there is amended language regarding how the funds for community hubs will be used. It provides some more flexibility than the originally reduced resolution. It recognizes that each hub will reflect the services needed in each community, and also says that the funds may be used to sustain the current hub in addition to increasing the number of hubs, and that was the original intent of the proposal. There is on page 5 the provision that calls for using this comprehensive framework as a model for collaboratively addressing the needs of other communities impacted by COVID-19, and it has been amended to specifically include the county minority liaisons through the county's Office of Community Partnership, in addition to the African American Health Program, Asian American Health Initiative, and community partners, which were included in the original language. I would say that the language regarding FEMA reimbursement has been made consistent in several provisions based on recommended wording from the Office of Management and Budget, and the name Latino Health Steering Committee has been corrected in a couple places in the resolution where Latino Health Initiative Steering Committee had been used. And so the motion would be to approve with those amendments if that's agreeable to the motion makers.
Move that we approve with those. I move that we approve with those amendments.
Councilmember Albornoz?
Second.
I like the term motion makers. I think that's very good. It's been motioned and made that we approve this motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand, and that carries unanimously. Thank you, and thank you all for all of your hard work on this. The next item that we have is agenda item 2B. And I believe Mr. Shakespeare talked about that. This is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the county government's FY21 operating budget for Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, FY20 Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program in the amount of $357,801 for COVID-19 supplemental grant. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, it is my understanding there are no speakers for this public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Then this public hearing is closed. Is there a motion? Councilmember Rice made the motion, and Councilmember Friedson has seconded it. All those in favor, please raise your hand, and that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item that we have is agenda item number 20. This is a public hearing on the county executive's recommended FY21 savings plan, amendments to the FY21 through 26 capital improvements program for Montgomery County government and the Housing Opportunities Commission. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, it is my understanding we do have speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, that first speaker would be Gordon Brenny.
Gordy Brenny with the Taxpayers League. Good afternoon. The capital and operating budget savings proposed by the executive are pathetically low. There's no strategic thinking about the overall direction of county spending during a recession that's projected to depress revenues by nearly $300 million in FY22. The executive now irresponsibly proposes small capital budget cuts, and for operations, just cutting vacant positions, deferring OPEB spending, and drawing on reserves while gambling on federal government bailouts. Let's not kid ourselves. A referendum approval to raise property taxes above the rate of inflation is the plan to balance the books in FY22. We strongly urge you to postpone property tax increases until we fix inequities in assessments for new construction and grow the property tax base through economic development. Taxpayers whose paychecks are limited to the rate of inflation understand that you postpone vacations from reality when you can't afford them. They also understand that counties' above-market pay raises every year since the last recession have now come home to roost as lower productivity, and would be righteously angry if a property tax increase was used to pay for more above-market pay raises. The last property tax increase paid for renovation of the council office building, and we're still hopping mad about that. What happened to fiscal discipline? It would be easy to blame the executive and the lack of strategic planning with accountable performance improvements. But the fact is there's no ongoing council process to evaluate capital investment returns or program efficiency and effectiveness. While it's easy to believe that our problem is just revenue shortfalls, a very high debt service load, and having too many employees chasing too few effective programs with excessive overhead and above-market compensation are the primary reasons for the mess we're in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing. You're muted, Mr. President. We can't hear you.
You know, I should know that. But anyhow, thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you. The public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion on this agenda item? Is someone going to make a motion? Yes. Councilmember Rice, seconded by Councilmember Juando. All those in favor, please. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item that we have is agenda item number 21. This is a public hearing on the proposed charter amendments and recommendation of Charter Review Commission. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of the business day, August 4th. Ms. Kennedy, I understand there are speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, the first speaker is Sarwar Faraz. Mr. Faraz, are you there? Hello, Mr. Faraz?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin, sir.
Greeting council members. Thank you very much for listening to me. My name is Sarwar Faraz. I've lived in Montgomery County for over 25 years, and I have lived in Clarksburg for 11 years. I support creating 9 districts for Montgomery County because as a resident of Up County, I feel that Up County has only one representative on the council, and that is our district council member, Craig Rice. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, there were some hearings on M83. During that council, Craig Rice was advocating for M83, and he was saying, my constituents want M83 because they are sitting in traffic for too long. It is impacting their quality of life and their businesses. I want you to focus on the words, my constituents. That connection that he has with his constituents is because he is the district council. He lives right here. And I believe that that's what we need for all the areas of Montgomery County. As such, I'm asking that we create 9 districts so that every district council member will have the same palpable connection to their constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of business day, August 4th. The next item that we have, there's been some additions to our agenda, is 21.5, and it's an introduction/action resolution to amend FY21 operating budget resolution 19-472, Section G, FY21 designation of entities for non-competitive contract award, and it's the status is Bethesda Cares. So it is an introduction, but it's also an action item. What is the pleasure of the council? Is there a motion, please? Councilmember
So moved.
And seconded by Councilmember Rice. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Here's me. I can't see my hand. And it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item that we have, which is also an addition, is 21.6, which is an introduction/action resolution to amend the FY21 operating budget 19-472, Section G, FY21, designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status for the Por Nuestra Salud y Bienestar, or for our health and well-being, which we had also heard about earlier. This is an introduction and an action. What is the pleasure of the council? Councilmember Navarro.
I'd like to move this item.
Councilmember Albornoz would like to second, I have a feeling. Yeah, I wish I could predict what the number will be that way as well, what the lottery number will be. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item that we have is action item number 22, which is an introduction, suspension of the rules, action item. It's a resolution to approve FY21 savings plan, and the action is requested to suspend the rules of procedure, so we need to do that, I guess, first. What is the pleasure of the council? It's moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. All those in favor of that, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. And I'm assuming that we now have to vote on the action item itself, the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. All those in favor of that, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously as well. Thank you. The next item that we have is under the district council session, which is a public hearing action item. And this is action item number 23. And this is the public hearing on a subdivision regulation amendment 20-01, rules of interpretation, computing time periods. This SRA, subdivision regulation amendment, would extend the validity period or deadlines of approved subdivisions that are unexpired at a certain date. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, it is my understanding we do have speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, we do. The first speaker is William Commoners.
President Katz, good afternoon, President Katz, members of the council. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Bill Commoners. I'm an attorney with Lurch, Early & Brewer, speaking today as an individual in support of SRA 20-01. There is a problem out there. The mere fact that I am speaking to you remotely while you sit remotely is evidence that the situation is not normal. SRA 20-01 is designed to address today's abnormality and its reality of uncertainty. I want to thank the sponsor and the co-sponsors for bringing this SRA forward. The SRA will apply only to those APF approvals that are valid today, including those having timely applied for extensions. The provision is fair by including all such approvals without distinction. The SRA also creates a corresponding extension for preliminary plan approvals because that is the point in the process where the APF determination is made. Yet there is a separate validity period for preliminary plans that is shorter than APF approvals. Both need to be extended in order to make either effective and meaningful. I invite your attention to page 2 of the staff report that discusses the effects of extending the life of plans. In earlier times, old plans that did not go forward had the potential to block approval of newer plans. But today the rules have changed or are in the process of changing. Staff notes in the last 3 sentences of that paragraph that there are now payments to be made for resolving road capacity, and while lack of school capacity can block a new plan today, the SSP as proposed by the Planning Board will generally change that. So the extension of older plans does not have the same potential negative effect it might have had years ago. In addition, many of the plans needing extension are not plans that have never started, but they are projects that have started and proceeded diligently, but are of a scale that requires flexibility to respond to market forces. These projects are in process, just not at a continuous linear pace. The SRA gives these approved plans an opportunity to weather this economic storm and remain prepared to lead the recovery when conditions allow. I urge the Council to act quickly and favorably on SRA 20-01, and I appreciate your time and consideration of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Stephen Robbins.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, President Katz and members of the Montgomery County Council. My name is Steve Robbins, and I'm also an attorney with Lurch, Hurley & Brewer. I am testifying as an individual in support of Subdivision Regulation Amendment 2001. Let me first thank lead sponsor, Councilmember Hans Riemer, together with co-sponsors, Councilmembers Friedson, Navarro, and Hucker, for putting forth the SRA. And thanks to the Council for considering this amendment as well. I'd also like to add thanks to Senior Legislative Analyst Jeff Zients for his efforts, and also to the Planning Board and their staff for evaluating the SRA and supporting it. This is a very important piece of legislation that will help applicants continue to weather the storm in face of this unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the county's economic environment. As you know, the SRA extends the duration of all deadlines and validity periods established for previously approved unexpired subdivisions by 2 years, including those applications for which an applicant has made a timely request for an extension to the Planning Board on or before the date of enactment. The SRA is a reasonable measure to provide relief to those applicants that have valid preliminary plans and adequate public facilities determinations, and in many instances have spent substantial funds and efforts to obtain these approvals, but may not be able to complete the land use process or move forward with construction at this point in time because of economic limitations. This legislation sends out a very positive message from the Council that this body is supportive of economic development and the desire to help stimulate activity by giving applicants some additional time needed to implement their approvals. We all know this unprecedented global pandemic is having a profound impact on the economy and our working environment. Your response is meaningful and appreciated. I would also note that we are not aware of any overriding negative impacts from the legislation. Thank you again for acting swiftly, positively, and sensitively in the approval of this SRA. On a personal note, I hope you and your families remain safe and healthy and that we will soon return to some sense of normalcy. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Silke Nupel.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, President Katz and council members. I'm Silke Knuppel. I'm an employee of BICA Maryland, but I'm here today to testify on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association, who is in support of Subdivision Regulation 2001. SRA 2001, which proposes to extend the duration of all deadlines and validity periods established for previously approved unexpired subdivisions by 2 years. I don't have to tell you, you're all very well aware that the county is experiencing an unprecedented global pandemic and an economic downturn that is unpredictable in scale and length and still has no foreseeable end. During the last recession, the County Council adopted legislation that enacted 2-year extensions for all valid APF and preliminary plan approvals. Again, these are unprecedented times, which is why this legislation is again needed to support the home building industry that is critical to the economic stability and recovery of the state and the county. Our industry represents many small businesses and employees in a time when businesses across the state are scrambling to stay afloat and survive, while also continuing to operate at a reduced capacity. Good projects would be the ones that suffer. This legislation helps avoid the expiration and or delay of those projects, ones that have already been reviewed and approved by all applicable county agencies and planning. The home building industry is critical to the economic stability and recovery of the state and county. The timetable on when society can return to some form of normal operating capacity is unknown. Projects that are a year or even 2 years out, many of which are state or county-backed projects, will be in jeopardy of facing major delays. Our request helps to address the pause in economic development the current situation is creating by allowing projects to retain the entitlements that they have received and for people to keep their jobs. We'd like to thank Councilmember
Ms. Knipple, your time is
Dreamer
up.
and co-sponsors. Okay, I just wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Dreamer and the co-sponsors, as well as the staff for their hard work in preparing this SRA. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, that wraps up our speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. We're going to close the public hearing. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you so much. I want to express my appreciation to everyone who testified and everyone that we've worked with on the private side to craft this proposed regulation.
Next Monday.
Yep. Somebody might want to mute. We had a memorable moment there a few minutes ago. This is an important measure. It will allow a few projects to, take a breath and then resume as soon as they can get their financing together, and not essentially get crushed by our county rules. We have a lot of rules around development, and it makes development very cumbersome and expensive. And as a result, we don't get as much development as we really want. We want to have 4,000 or 5,000 housing units a year. That's a historical average that is added to the housing supply every year. And we're now down to about 2,000, 2,500, and we have been for the last 4 or 5 years. So we really do have a significant issue creating enough housing to support the growth of our population, and that has a cascading effect into the housing market, creating less supply than the growth in demand, and that increases the cost and makes this county less affordable, less inclusive, and less consistent with our values. So we have to take the leadership and make the decisions to support the growth of housing through a public-private kind of partnership vision of the private sector delivering housing at the same time as we do everything else that we need to do, rental assistance and support for the Housing Opportunities Commission and zoning reform and you name it, all of the above. So this measure again just allows for certain projects that have their approvals not to get crushed by the rules and then resume as soon as they can. So thank you so much to my colleagues for their support. I'd like to move approval of this.
Excuse me a second. Number one, there's no committee recommendation. Of course, as Councilmember Reamer was doing, you need to do this by a motion and a second to get it on the table. Number two, it's not my job to confuse the council, but sometimes I do that free of charge anyhow. And this time I might have done it by introducing something, then the planning board recommending repealing all of it and adopting the same intent of the council a different way. So what staff is recommending you adopt is version 7 of the amendment that went to the council by an addendum, and that changes the provisions in the uncodified sections of Chapter 50.3 and 50.4, as was done before. I tried to simplify that. I thought I had agreement that it worked. The planning board is the one who administers this and interprets it. So apparently I did not succeed in that. They recommended in going the way of the proposal in version 7 of this, which is submitted to the council by addendum. This does apply for all those listening to plans that are alive, either by the existing date or by the extension filed while the plan was alive. It doesn't apply to plans that have expired. That's it. Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming Councilmember Raymer and Councilmember Friedson, you are fine with the motion being number 7?
Version 7, yeah.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Raymer, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Mr. President, this is a roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Giwando.
Yes.
Mr. Giwando votes yes. Mr. Beamer.
Yes.
Mr. Beamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro.
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Alpernos.
Yes.
Mr. Alpernos votes yes. Mr. Rice.
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson.
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Hunker.
Yes.
Mr. Hunker votes yes. Mr. Katz.
Yes. And it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. I've been Keith Levchenko has just sent me a text that he needs to speak about to the council briefly regarding item number 20. There were 2 resolutions to approve and a combination of committee and council staff recommendations. The single action was vague. Mr. Levchenko, if you could please tell us what you're talking about, please.
Yes, Action 20 involved 2 resolutions. One was the one related to the CIP amendments related to county government. So that's one resolution. But the second resolution related to the HOC project that had been included in the original county executive transmittal on the savings plan. So first, there were 2 resolutions to approve, which the council can do with one vote, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear to the council members and to the public that one vote covered both resolutions. And then secondly, the resolutions as set up included a combination of committee recommendations where the committees took up these projects, but also council staff recommendations where they were going directly to the council. And so I just wanted to make that clear as well to the council that the council staff report and the resolutions as included in that report assume that combination as well. So you have 2 resolutions and you have a combination of committee recommendations and council staff recommendations. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to cover any of those as well.
Thank you. So we need to go back and change what we have done? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I just wanted to clarify that the motion to approve was in fact for 2 resolutions, not just for 1 resolution. If the council's comfortable with if that's the understanding of the council, that's fine. But I just thought it was important to clarify that.
Okay. I haven't seen anybody say that they're not clarified, so I think we're good. Thank you very much, Mr. Levchenko, to make certain of that. Very good. Next is the presentation by the Council of Fellows. And if they didn't see government in action before, they certainly saw it today. They had to wait an extra hour plus to just speak today. So I guess we're going to turn it over to Ms. Dunn and Ms. Rodriguez-Hernandez, and they can lead us off, please.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here with virtually our 5 summer fellows. As most of you know, the council for the last 3 years has hosted a summer fellows program. These are graduate students who are between the 1st and 2nd year of graduate program in public administration, planning, public policy. Those are typically the programs that we seek out to get fellow applicants. And this summer there are 5. There are 3 that are working with central staff. There's one fellow who is working on the OLO staff, and we have another fellow who's been placed with the MCEDC. And you'll get that information from each one of them as they go through their presentations. They're going to give you about a 5-minute presentation on their research topic for this summer. What we'd ask is that you hold your questions all until the very end. That way all of the fellows have an equal amount of time to share with you what they're doing, and then we'll cover all the questions at the end. That's okay. Oh, and I also want to just make note that Nicole Rodriguez has been helping with this program equally. She's awesome. She's scheduled very many of the things that the fellows have gotten to do this summer, and she has jointly helped with guiding their research with me. And with that, I guess we will go to the first fellow, who is Upneat Atwal.
Do you all see my screen?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Upneat Atwal. I'm currently a master's student studying urban and regional planning with a focus on community and economic development at Georgetown University. Today I'm going to be presenting my summer research project titled Equitable Education and Engagement of Underrepresented and At-Risk Youth in Montgomery County. So who are underrepresented and at-risk youth? I've identified them as youth between the ages of 14 to 24 who reside in at least one of 16 identified census tracts. And the way I identified these census tracts is by looking at the lowest median household income tracts in the county, as well as the lowest level of predominant education attainment for ages 25 plus across the county. Many of these census tracts also have identified neighborhood gangs, and the students from these tracts attend the 11th lowest performing schools in MCPS. Why is it important to better educate them? Well, there's a lot of existing personal and social issues, such as a lack of friend and family support systems, a lack of financial assistance, food insecurity, gang involvement, drug abuse, and the COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated all these issues. Here's just a look at the 16 tracts I've identified. I split them up into 4 different sections of the county. As you can see, each of the tracts makes 65% or less of the Montgomery County median household income, and that's according to Pew Research Center, which says that 2/3 of median household income is deemed as low income. Here's a map. I just highlighted some of the areas around the county that these 16 census tracts are from. As you can see, I've also split in all the council districts. Each of the 16 census tracts I identified are in the 4 districts, excluding District 1. This is not to say there are not problems in District 1, it was just not the focus of my research. So here's just an overview of the schools that the students attend from the 16 census tracts that I identified. As you can see, Ever Farms rates are as high as 82, almost 83% at schools like Watkins Mill and John F. Kennedy. Graduation rates are as low as 76% at Gaithersburg High School, and dropout rates are almost 16% at schools like Northwood. There's also great disparity in percentage of students meeting University System of Maryland entrance requirements, such as Kennedy only having almost 24% of their students meet requirement versus almost 85% at a school like Churchill. So does Montgomery County already have an existing gold standard program that could help solve some of the issues faced by youth in these communities? I believe that we do, and the way that I identify gold standard program is one that provides full circle guidance from education to community engagement that provides growth and development opportunities for youth. Some of the youth development organizations I identified were the Brothers Academy in Gaithersburg, Identity, and Liberty's Promise, as well as the county-led program of ACES, and an education to economy pipeline that already exists here from MCPS to MC, the universities at Shady Grove, to a job within the Montgomery County workforce. What does this successful framework look like? So I chose the Brothers Academy to highlight because they're an organization that both do the education aspect of things, but also the engagement aspect of development for youth. They provide educational support through tutoring, testing aid. Now they have virtual learning because of COVID. They also have engagement opportunities through community service, fitness programs, mentorship, and they adapt each of their strategies to each individual student that they have. ACES is a gold standard county-run program, in my opinion, because they provide the full-circle education engagement framework as well, while creating a seamless and supportive pathway from high school to college completion and staying in contact with their students as they become alumni in the community. Can we expand these already existing gold standard programs? I believe that we can and we must. Others Academy and other development organizations reach thousands of students successfully, but they're all very siloed from each other at the moment. ACES is also an amazing program, but it's limited in enrollment and it's only reaching a fraction of potential capacity. I think that we need to leverage these already existing programs and better serve them for the most underrepresented and most at-risk youth across the county. So here's some of the short and long-term strategies I've identified, as well as next steps. First off, we need to have early intervention. As I said, I identified youth as being between the ages of 14 and 24, and I think that right when they hit that age of 14 coming into high school, we need to pull them in and say, hey, we want you to be part of this program that's going to help for your growth and development. We also need a stronger transition and support between the organizations and a guaranteed pathway to ACES, and we need to focus on the pipeline to education and workforce that already exists here in the county. Some of the next steps I identified are utilizing the Montgomery County Collaboration Council by ensuring that we have grassroots level outreach and then ensure that we have vertical progression for these students from the identified census tracts. And we also need to help expand the ACES program and increase collaboration among all these organizations. I just wanted to end with saying that without this pipeline, I would not be here to present this to you. I actually attended one of the 11 high schools I identified at Gaithersburg High School. I completed my associate's degree at Montgomery College, and I completed my bachelor's degree at University of Shady Grove. And that entire pipeline led to me being able to work here in Montgomery County doing this council fellowship with the county council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Dunn, who's the next speaker?
Yes. So next we have a presentation for you by Ms. Julia Bauer, and she's the OLO Fellow.
Hello, my name is Julia Bauer, and I am a second-year master's student studying public affairs at Indiana University. As Ms. Dunn mentioned, this summer I had the privilege of working with the Office of Legislative Oversight as their summer fellow. One of the projects I worked on for OLO was a jurisdictional comparison of the Community Use of Public Facilities Department, which I will be discussing today. So my project is a little different than the other fellows because my research is a part of a larger project that the council requested OLO complete. Therefore, I am unable to provide specific recommendations based on my research since I will be adding information to what OLO is already reviewing. In order to produce a proper comparison between Montgomery County's CUF department and similar departments in other jurisdictions, I relied on population size to begin my search. In order to do this, I found a chart of counties organized by population and looked at a cluster of counties above Montgomery County to see if they offered a similar program. Based on my findings and previous research conducted by Liz Haberman, the former deputy director of CUF, I began to review these counties based on their facility types, reservation processes, priority of use, user fees, funding, and revenue. From my search, there were only 2 counties that I found that had a similar program to CUF. This includes San Jose and Santa Clara County, California, and Pima County, Arizona, which is home to Tucson, Arizona. Ms. Haberman had already found programs in Orange County, Florida, and Fulton County, Georgia from her previous research. As we can see from this chart, all the counties are similar in size and have relatively similar facilities to offer their community. One primary distinction is that Orange and Fulton counties solely rent out school facilities, compared to Santa Clara and Pima counties, which only rent out city or county facilities. With that background information, I began reviewing each county's reservation processes and priority of use. For reservations, both Pima and Orange counties do not have a specific timeline for users to request a facility. Comparatively, Fulton and Santa Clara counties require reservations to be made in advance. Santa Clara has the most intense reservation timeline, expecting residents to put in their applications 6 to 12 months in advance. Comparatively, Fulton County requires the second highest notice with 25 operational days in advance of the event. For reference, Montgomery County requires at least 7 days in advance for reservations. When meeting with San Jose's Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, the employees recounted how their previous reservation process for fields received negative media attention. They explained that the original process for sports fields reservations were opened on the same day every year and had to be completed in person. So, the largest and most funded organizations began camping outside the reservation office to ensure they would receive first pick at facilities, dates, and times. Now, there is a priority for internal use nonprofits than the general public to ensure other entities have access to rentals rather than the same groups with the most money, time, and resources. In terms of reservations, Orange and Fulton counties use an online reservation system as opposed to emailing or calling when submitting a form. Similarly, Montgomery County also relies on an online reservation system called Active Montgomery, and they use phone calls to handle their reservations. In terms of fees, Orange County had the most interesting fee schedule. Basically, the user group that had the least priority pays the most in fees. There are 6 main types of fees, and the lowest priority group, which is private interest or non-governmental, pays for all of them. For Montgomery County, all groups are assessed the same type of fees, but they are offered at a discounted rate based on the user group. As for payment due dates, every county varies on when exactly they expect users to submit their payment. All but Pima County require payment in advance to some degree. San Jose is the only facility that requires a partial payment to complete the application, and it has a rigorous fee schedule with percentages of the bill due up until the day of use. Comparatively, Montgomery County requires their fees to be paid up front. Finally, I have provided you funding and revenue information here, but it is difficult to make a simple comparison because they all have complex budgeting practices. So, for example, Pima County does not separate their facilities department from their main natural resources, parks and recreation department. Therefore, their funding and full-time equivalents include the entire overseeing department rather than just the specific department that handles reservations and rentals. For context, CUF's revenue for fiscal year 2020 was $12 million and funding was $11.9 million, with 31.27 full-time equivalents. Finally, I would like to remind you that my project was a comparison between Montgomery County and other jurisdictions, and that my research is a piece of a larger project that the Council will be receiving later this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn, please.
Yes. And next you will have a presentation by Jonathan Katz.
And I always like to start out to let everybody know that Jonathan and I are not related, except maybe we are. And during our conversations, we might have found that we're long lost cousins, maybe. Anyhow, Jonathan, welcome. And Jonathan, to prove we might be related, you're on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Is everyone able to see my screen? All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Jonathan Paul Katz, and I am a fellow with the County Council Central Office this summer. During the academic year, I am a graduate student in community planning at the University of Maryland, focusing on aging and disability access. This presentation, No Center About Us Without Us, Building Senior Center Plus in Montgomery County, is about expanding senior center offerings for older adults with memory loss. The context for this proposal is that the county's population of older adults, people over the age of 65, will increase by 56% between now and 2040. Many of these folks will have early-stage dementia or other forms of memory loss. They won't necessarily have particularly intense support needs, but they won't be as independent as they may have been in their youth or older adults without memory loss. Many of these people who would have normally gone to nursing homes or assisted living facilities will be aging in place in light of the coronavirus pandemic's impact on congregate living facilities. There is a shortage of targeted services for this population. They are not independent enough to navigate senior centers, but adult daycare centers don't have the right supports and are too interventionist for these people's needs. At the same time, people with memory loss face social and institutional barriers to social and cognitive engagement in their tangible and intangible communities in Montgomery County and all over the country. Their care partners lack respite, given that they must provide social and cognitive engagement and care on a constant basis for older adults with memory loss. The county has a policy of being a dementia-friendly community, expanding service design and delivery to better address the needs of older adults with memory loss. And I believe that expanding senior centers to what I call a Senior Center Plus model would support this initiative. The goal for Senior Centers Plus would be to be a place for older adults with memory loss, early stage dementia, mild cognitive impairment, to find a culturally embedded community that provides opportunities for social and cognitive support with the infrastructure needed to make that happen. Luckily, Montgomery County can already emulate successful models from across North America. In the course of my research, I spoke with over a dozen practitioners in the region and further afield who already provide similar programming for older adults with early dementia. 3 of these programs, including one in Montgomery County, are based at senior centers. They operate within the context of a larger intergenerational facility or a facility for older adults, but have specific programming for older adults with memory loss. Two other models were also interesting. Fairfax County integrates older adults with memory loss into their normal programming for older adults. And Paul's Club in Vancouver, Canada operates a recreational club for adults with young onset dementia. These programs all offer very different models, and you can learn about them in my report, but they succeed because they do four things. They account for participants' social and cultural contexts. They provide opportunities for social interaction and cognitive engagements that is relevant to the participants in their communities. They account for the physical and financial realities participants face in their budgeting and in their facility design and setup. And they provide transportation to and from the programming, which is a key part of Care Partner Respite. Montgomery County can emulate all of these things and should in a Senior Center Plus program. I identified 3 areas for recommendations for a Senior Center Plus program. In the first realm, the social realm, there should be trained volunteers and skilled staff who provide culturally relevant programming that attracts older adults with memory loss and their caregivers, possibly in and hopefully in native languages. These programs should avoid challenge activities that are, though meant to measure cognitive decline in STEM, and often make older adults with memory loss feel belittled or small, another topic you can learn about in my report. These activities should be varied, but they should be on a regular schedule, which helps older adults with memory loss feel more stable and secure in cognitive engagement. And of course, older adults with memory loss, like everyone else, love to socialize, and there should be room for spontaneous socializing. Which brings me to my second domain, physical considerations. Facilities should have room for socializing, but they should also be navigable. Facilities such as senior centers, community centers, and other places that host these programs must pay special attention to entries and exits, wayfinding, and restrooms, barriers that often stymie older adults with memory loss. Of course, the third domain is very important. One practitioner told me that there's no point running a program if transportation is not considered. We can consider extant programs in Montgomery County as something to expand through the Villages and Senior Connection that provide volunteer transport. We can emulate the German model, the Bürgerbus system, of having fixed volunteer transport cycles, possibly on fixed routes. Or we can emulate Fairfax County and work with our paratransit service and Metro Access. Funding for these programs would come from federal, state, and local sources, and hopefully from the council budget. I estimate that a 4-day-a-week program for 20 people would cost about $360,000 a year to operate, but the benefits to care partners and older adults would be immeasurable. Thank you for your time. I look forward to questions. The flower is the forget-me-not, the international symbol of dementia advocacy. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next Summer Fellow who will be presenting to you is the NCEDC Summer Fellow, Olivia Rains.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, awesome. Great. Wait, do you see a zoom on the side? Sorry. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, council members, and thank you so much for hearing our presentations today. My name is Olivia Rains, and I am a graduate student at UNC Chapel Hill studying city and regional planning, and I'm working with NCEDC this summer. Today I'm going to be presenting on the proposed changes to the subdivision staging policy, or what the planning board is proposing to be called the County Growth Policy for 2020 to 2024. My research focused on a few different aspects of the document, but today I'm going to be primarily focusing on the proposed utilization premium payments as a measure to address school overcrowding and offering some recommendations for other sustainable solutions to address this issue. So I wanted to provide a brief overview of what the subdivision staging policy is to frame my research. The SSP actually stems from the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance that was enacted in 1973 with the goal of synchronizing development with adequate public facilities such as transportation networks and educational facilities. Until 1986, there wasn't necessarily a guiding document to outline how that would be determined, and that's where the SSP comes in. It's meant to guide the APFO and establish criteria for determining adequacy, and it's updated every 4 years, so this next version will be for 2020 to 2024. Part of the SSP provides guidelines for school impact taxes, which are meant to help pay for the cost of providing educational facilities necessitated by new development. Impact taxes are meant to ensure that new development pays its fair share. However, although 63% of new development is multifamily housing, most enrollment growth is caused by the turnover of single-family housing at 81%. So impact taxes do not necessarily generate the revenue necessary to fully address school overcrowding, and I'm going to be looking at some other solutions. So under the current SSP, new development in areas with overcrowded schools is charged an impact tax premium of 120%. In the draft, this would be reduced to 100% and replaced with a utilization premium payment, or UPP. The UPP thresholds are proposed when schools' projected utilization 3 years into the future exceeds 120%. So in the chart to the right, you can see single-family units have a higher UPP than multifamily units, and that is because multifamily housing generates a lower student generation rate. And then below, you can see the premium payment factor at each school level. So theoretically, if schools at all 3 levels exceed the thresholds, a developer would have to pay the UPP for each level, resulting in a maximum impact tax premium of 160%. Currently, there are no areas where all 3 school levels are over capacity, but that could change depending on enrollment growth. So I wanted to look not just at UPPs themselves, but also at the context surrounding them to think about why they might not be the only or even best solution to address school overcrowding. So first, I looked at recent economic conditions in Montgomery County and observed features like stagnating wages, office vacancy, minimal net new establishments, as you can see in the chart below, and slow residential development. And my report will demonstrate that based on these indicators, additional impact taxes might further slow development growth. Second, I looked at the impact of COVID-19. In FY21, the county estimates that tax revenue will be $191 million less than originally anticipated due to the long-term impacts of the virus. And in FY20, the revenue generated from the impact tax was only 0.4% of the overall revenue and only 8% of MCPS's capital improvements budget. So UPPs are likely not going to be a large revenue generator in recession conditions. And then finally, I looked at MPDUs as a case study. The current SSP provides impact tax exemptions for projects that provide 25% or more moderately priced dwelling units. And this is consistent with the county's goals, which are to provide more housing and more affordable housing. So I looked at MPDUs as a way to show that dependent on the county's goals, exempting impact tax can be an effective strategy. And given current economic conditions and the recession brought on by COVID, the county might pursue other techniques to address school overcrowding outside of impact tax premiums. So my research paper does not argue for the removal of UPPs in the draft, but instead wanted to take a closer look at what can be going on in concert with the SSP that might ease the burden on this document to be the only tool to address school overcrowding. So I have 3 recommendations. First, assess the feasibility of utilizing vacant educational buildings and urban office spaces. The most recent estimates of pre-COVID office vacancy in the county were 15%, and there's an example in the report of what utilizing large office campuses for schools might look like. Additionally, the county government currently owns 27 closed school facilities, 13 of which are in areas where at least one school is overcrowded. Although these schools would need improvements, this removes the cost of land, and MCPS could also look at designing schools that accommodate fewer grade levels, for example, a K-3 system. Second, perform an audit of school facility construction costs and make efforts to reduce those costs, which will free up available funds for additional capacity needs. The average school construction spending per pupil in the county is about $52,000, which is by no means unique to the county, but other districts have been able to reduce these costs. So one way to do this would include leasing school facilities from a private developer and buying outright after a set period of time. And I provide a case study of that in my report as well. And then third, consider a more proactive, countywide approach to redrawing school boundaries to relieve school overcrowding. Sorry, I got a Zoom pop up. I know that the county has audited a report on boundaries that is set to come out in December 2020, but this report will not make specific recommendations, and there are multiple instances where schools that are severely overcrowded are adjacent to schools at 75 to 85% capacity. So redrawing boundaries is not only a cost-effective way to address overcrowding, but also has equity implications and can address some of the de facto segregation that results from boundary lines to more equitably distribute educational resources in the county. Oops. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
And this is what I look like. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Olivia. That was great. And the last summer fellow to present to you is Ms. Mira Singhal.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Wonderful. Hey, well, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to all of our research and projects throughout the summer. We really appreciate it. My name is Mira Singhal. I'll be a second-year graduate student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in Public Administration and City and Regional Planning. And my research this summer focused on pretrial services and risk assessment tools that are used in Montgomery County. So before we begin, I just wanted to give a brief introduction of the pretrial services. They're located in the Department of Correction and Rehabilitation. And pretrial services is responsible for assessing newly arrested defendants for the possibility of release into the community while they're awaiting their trial. And it also focuses on supervising defendants who have been released into the community before their trial. So this is specifically the pretrial assessment unit, which utilizes a risk assessment tool. And risk assessment tools basically take a variety of different variables from the defendant's background. So things like age, employment, education, drug and alcohol use, and any prior criminal activity. And it predicts the defendant's potential flight risk and any threat to community safety. So this includes things like failure to appear in court and possible recidivism rates. So that's within the pretrial assessment unit, and then the pretrial supervision unit also does case management for supervision of defendants before their trial. So based on my findings, Montgomery County does use a risk assessment tool. It's called the Pretrial Release Risk Instrument. It was created in 2007. It was most recently validated in 2019. Two things about the risk assessment tool is, one, it's actually validated by its creator. So to my knowledge, there is no kind of external validation of the tool. And second, this tool is not made publicly available for people to understand how they're being evaluated. Now, this has caused issues in other jurisdictions around the United States, which has led to court cases, specifically because of the violation of the defendant's due process, which is something to keep in mind. Within Montgomery County, we actually have very limited data available on pretrial release and statistics. Our major performance measures typically include failure to appear in court and then the average caseload for our supervision management teams. However, since the tool was implemented in Montgomery County, there has been a 35% increase in recommendation for release, which is overall positive, as well as a 96% court appearance rate. So basically meaning 4% of pretrial defendants did not show to court. So externally, this is seemingly positive. You know, we can see that since the tool has been implemented, there has been an increase in recommendation for release. However, there's no way to disaggregate any of this data to focus on it, whether it be through race, gender, or socioeconomic status. And so the public cannot actually see the data fully, which leads me to my final point of the initial goal of risk assessment versus its actual impact. So the initial goal is actually to decrease subjective or racial biases within the decisions made for pretrial release. Recently, however, there's been a lot of criticism and change of opinion towards using these risk assessment tools. So specifically, the Pretrial Justice Institute has revoked their support of these tools. And it kind of just boils down to the fact that they've found natural biases within the questions being asked in the tool. And in some states like New Jersey and Kentucky, there's actually been an increased racial inequity in the decisions being made after they had implemented these tools. So basically, this is all to say, just because we've switched to a more standardized process to ensure that these, we're trying to ensure that there's no racial biases within these decisions being made, we don't actually have a way to ensure that or guarantee that, and we especially cannot do that if we don't have the data to prove that. So we really need to focus more on collecting and analyzing our data, specifically through the lens of emotional, social, and financial impacts, and not just failure to appear in court, in order to understand if this tool is either helping or hurting people in our community and our rehabilitation efforts. So this leads me to some of my recommendations. I'm going to split it up into 3 sections: COVID-19 related recommendations, and then short and long term. And each of these can be found more in detail in the final report. But to start with COVID-19, suspend co-payments for defendants who are seeking any kind of medical treatment, whether it's for COVID-19 testing or COVID-19 treatment. provide masks and soap at no cost, both to defendants and to any of our case management supervisors, and reduce or temporarily eliminate the cost of phone calls for defendants or increase their telephone privilege. One, it increases their mental health during a global pandemic, and two, it decreases the face-to-face interactions and reduces the exposure or spread of COVID-19 in the jail while they're awaiting trial. Moving on to short term, thinking about terminating or subsidizing fees for pretrial release programs. Cost should never be a barrier to entry in these programs, and we want to make sure that we're as inclusive as possible for pretrial service programs. Creating an impact assessment survey after pretrial release recommendations are made. So even though we have a 35% increase in recommendations of release, we shouldn't just stop there. We should understand, one, who is not being recommended for release and what happens if they have to spend pretrial in jail. What does that do, again, to their emotional health, mental health, financial health? And also focusing on what happens after the trial. And then finally, creating a specific risk assessment tool for different types of offenses. So Montgomery County only has one standardized tool right now, but there's a wide range of different outcomes that we could be focusing on. So basically, it means we could create independent tools for general recidivism, sexual recidivism, or violent recidivism, as well as pretrial misconduct, rather than just having one general tool across the field, because it can almost not be as specific as you would like it to be. And finally, in the long term, maybe think about discussing a transparency law for pretrial tools used within the county. Many states are already doing this just to ensure that a defendant's due process is not being violated. Revalidating the risk assessment tool using the updated measures. So again, not just failure to appear in court, but more of the social, mental impacts of pretrial release and recommendations. And then also guaranteeing that there's some kind of external validation to the tool we're being used. So not just having the creator validate that. And then finally, collecting and analyzing data on the demographics of participants recommended for pretrial supervision programs. So this could be alternative community service, substance abuse programs, and just guaranteeing that there's no kind of subjective or racial biases in the decisions and the recommendations that are being made. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation as well as my colleagues' presentations, and we do look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether we can applaud so that you can hear us, but we're applauding. You know, it is absolutely unbelievable, the topics that you chose, and candidly, my guess is we will use each and every one of your reports in a variety of ways and in a variety of times throughout. But there's not one topic that you have worked on that I, am not intrigued about, and I look really forward to reading the reports. I mean, to the whole idea of, just to the last pretrial services discussion. For years I've been concerned about the copay, especially, COVID has certainly brought this to light, but I've been concerned about the copay and the whole idea just to reduce the cost of a phone call or eliminate it is something that we should be doing. It's something that we need to be discussing. And you've looked at it and said, not one of these topics is something that is not timely, and it's not something that we should consider. The whole idea for school overcrowding, that should be, all of us should read that, and we certainly, and I know we will, and we should certainly send it to our friends and at the Board of Education as well to let them know of the good works that you've done. But I know Councilmember Reamer had a comment as well.
Well, I'll try to be super brief since we've still got some heavy items on the agenda or substantial items ahead of us. But thank you to all the fellows. You've done a marvelous job. This is a very unusual year in so many different ways. But each of your reports and evaluations will be useful. We'll draw from them in the future. If need, it's good to see you again. I remember we met at the planning board that evening. Thank you for introducing yourself to me. And Olivia, really, your observation that we have very weak economic performance and housing growth it's related to our very substantial requirements. It's as though we assume that the market is going to produce what we want, and all we have to do is regulate it to get the public benefit. Problem is the market won't necessarily produce what we want, and so you've outlined some ways that we could change our thinking about development versus turnover in neighborhoods and how that all relates to school construction. So these are complex issues, but I really I love the idea of the memory certified senior center, and some of the pretrial. I've been talking about that with people reaching out to me all the time on that. So there's so much here, but thank you to each of you. You did a terrific job.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. They were fantastic presentations. I just wanted to highlight two in particular. The Senior Plus model, which I'm very familiar with, is a remarkable model. We have fantastic senior centers here in Montgomery County, and it corresponds to a movement for adult medical day programming, which in particular is well positioned to help our senior community with dementia and cognitive issues. So you're spot on in those recommendations, and I do think that's something we need to move towards. And I also wanted to particularly highlight the youth development presentation as well. I've dedicated most of my professional career, as many of my colleagues have as well, in that space. And the demographic analysis is also very spot on. And as we noted, and I got a preview of that particular presentation earlier this week, which I really appreciated. And there were a couple of things that I think we also need to acknowledge in the success of programs like Brothers and ACEs, and that's the people behind them. Morris Hudson is a force of nature. That program is successful because he won't let it not be successful. And he is just so deeply committed for all the right reasons to helping youth. And it's that passion and energy that then translates to programming, which is one of the reasons why that program, and ACEs as well, through all of the various partners. But my just great job, all of you, and look forward to following up on a number of these recommendations.
Thank you. And I think that the quote that you said about Morris Hudson, I think he will take that out and highlight it every time we see him. So anyhow, he is a force of nature and quite a guy beyond. Councilmember Navarro.
So true, so true. Well, thank you so much, and great job. These were very thoughtful and super useful presentations that I know we're going to be able to utilize. Particularly when I was listening to Mr. Idwal talk about his analysis and talk about the sort of gold standard programs. I think it's a reminder to us on the council as we're facing such difficult economic times to continue to be very focused on programs that are of high quality, that yield results, and that we can scale up. And that's been sort of my mantra for a long time, but it's because, we tend to fund a lot of programs and have a lot of initiatives, but then we rarely have opportunities to scale up. And I really like that presentation because it once again highlights where our needs are, but the fact that we're fortunate to have these programs that respond, and therefore there's no doubt that when we're making budgetary decisions, we need to look at those who yield the best results. So I so much appreciated all the different analyses, and again, stay tuned because I'm sure your work is going to be featured in many of the decisions that we'll be making throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm too going to be brief. I just wanted to say to Amit, thank you so much. You have continued to impress me, sir, and your grasp of being able to take your personal knowledge and your experience and combine that with research is what we try to do each and every day. Many of us who were born and raised here who've seen some of the challenges that our friends as well as ourselves have faced, and being able to couple that with research and analysis is something that just can't be understated. It really is something that is truly tremendous. And as you heard from my colleagues, is something that we continue to try and strive and focus on each and every day. What we were just talking about earlier today with Councilmember Albornoz and I working together on making sure that we had community youth programs that are stood up for some of our youth, and the conversation I had with you just yesterday when we were talking about what's happening in Germantown Park and what's happening in this region as a whole, those are the kinds of things that are real life-changing instances, right? Where we're actually not even just talking about what's sound good policy, but also you talk about what's saving lives. And so it really matters a lot. And so I just really want to thank each and every one of you for taking this incredibly seriously. Obviously, you already have the backgrounds with which to do it, but I mean, in the midst of the global pandemic, in the midst of everything that's going on, these reports are no less than anything that we've come to expect from our summer fellows. And so just wanted to say kudos to each and every one of you for the great job that you've done.
Thank you. Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to congratulate each of you. I'm amazed. I feel like this was record time. Maybe I'm just in the COVID bubble, but quickly and how comprehensive these reports were. And I feel like we all just met with you guys for the first time. So just really, really proud and happy. And you literally covered, I think this was said in another way, almost every issue in one way or the other. If you talk about growth, you could put the environment in there, and housing, you have education. I mean, you touched on from cradle to grave here and in between, and really, really well done, really well presented. And I definitely want to follow up with each of you before you go about your report and ask questions. I'm sure many of us have questions, and really proud of you. And of course, Upneat, thank you again. I saw my where I grew up highlighted on the map there, and it's a reminder that this, again, to Councilmember Rice's point and others' points, this is very real, and even our senior population as well, as we deal with those challenges at the end of life. So and everything in between. I really appreciate the work, and you're off to a good start. So hopefully we'll see some of you back here after you graduate too, so to help us solve some of these problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also just want to echo my appreciation for all the summer fellows for working through these challenging times, and thankfully for many of you, the information was at your fingertips. And as has been noted, the topics that you selected are absolutely timely and are so relevant. And we will be utilizing your foundations and building upon them to make some of the reforms and implement some of the good public policy that you've offered. While everybody had really good presentations, and some of my colleagues have pointed some of them out, I just want to make two comments about two of them. Julia, I thought your presentation on CUPF, while normally not the most exhilarating of conversations in public life, I thought the perspective you gave for comparable jurisdictions around the country was excellent, and to see that there are other areas of the country that do similar things. But if there was a takeaway from what you said, the bottom line is the revenue that we bring in from this operation, while not perfect, and certainly it could be improved upon, we're doing pretty well compared to other jurisdictions. So I really appreciate that perspective. And then just a general comment, Upneat, joining the chorus of my colleagues, you continue to be a homegrown success story, and the person that you are and everything that you have done and will continue to do, I'm looking forward to watching you. So keep up the good work, and for everybody else, I know this was not a typical summer program, but thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and it will certainly live long beyond this summer. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Everything has been said by everybody else, but hasn't been said by me, as Councilman Katz likes to say, so I will just echo all the comments of colleagues and express my own personal appreciation. The talent that we get at the council is just extraordinary, and you all are some of the best you've seen in your time here, and across the gamut of so many vexing public policy issues. And certainly this was a fascinating time for you all to be here, I should say, although I don't know what here is. It certainly means something different to all of us, and I think all of us will remember this time that you were at the council without being at the council, and really appreciate your work, which we certainly will be able to utilize as we move forward. And I wish all of you the best of luck moving forward, and hope to see each of you soon, ideally in person at the council when we're all back able to do it safely. And hopefully some of you will be back contributing formally in Montgomery County sometime soon. So thank you very much, and really extraordinary work.
Thank you. And again, to all the fellows, thank you very much. Though this was the strangest of summers, you all certainly have reminded us how important the summer fellows truly are for Montgomery County and for the county council. So thank you very much. And with that, we're going to be moving on because we have such a short agenda today. We have a couple other items left. The next item that we have is an action item, and that's an appointment to the Montgomery County Planning Board. And I believe Councilmember Rice has something to say. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And because we are pressed for time, and I don't want to belabor the point, I would like to nominate Gerald Cici, who has served us well on the Planning Board in his current role and was looking for reappointment. I heard from a majority of the Planning Board members who expressed their appreciation in the great work that he's been doing, and also talked to a large amount of folks in the community here in the Up County who were very happy with what Mr. Cici has done as well. So from that perspective, I'm very proud to nominate him again for reappointment to the Planning Board.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson. Second.
Yep, I'll second it. I'll just be very brief, echo all the comments of Councilmember Rice, and Mr. Cici has served ably and capably. Really appreciate his willingness to continue his service, and beyond his experience is just a really good and decent person, and really appreciate his willingness to continue, and I will second the nomination. Look forward to voting in favor of him and continuing our work together with the Planning Board and his service on it.
Thank you very much. I see no other speakers. It's been moved by Councilmember Rice, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And the last item, but far from the last item, believe me, on our agenda today is the action on the appointments to the Policing Advisory Commission. And who would like to lead that off, please? Councilmember Reamer. I had a feeling you might. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, and as chair of the Public Safety Committee, appreciate your rolling this one to me. Unfortunately, I don't have remarks prepared for the moment. It's just been such a long day, and there's been so much going on. But I would like to move. I'm going to make sure I get the motion right here. Removing the nomination of the appointment of all of the members that are mentioned in the packet. So first I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Girondo. I don't know whether or not, well, I guess Mr. Drummer is the one I say. Mr. Drummer, is that the correct motion? We don't need to have, I want to make certain that that is exactly how we should be doing
it. Okay.
Well, we are appointing the members of the commission, right? So
yeah, you want to appoint, you want to move to appoint the members that are listed in the packet. I think that's what he did.
Yes, he did. All right, and then the question becomes, we have interim chairs and vice chairs that are mentioned as well. Does that need to be specifically mentioned, or is that a part of the entire motion, the entire package?
I think you should.
If I can jump in here, you do have a resolution in the packet, and the resolution specifies all of the members and also the interim chair and vice chair. So I think the motion should just be to approve the resolution.
Okay, very good.
That makes sense.
Thank you. Is Mr. Reamer, Councilmember Reamer, are you okay with that?
Yes, I certainly am. Thank you.
Second.
Okay. And I was going to ask. Okay. Any other comments, Councilmember Reamer or any other council member?
I wanted to try to make 30 seconds worth of comments. This is an incredibly impressive group of people. When I sat down to work on this legislation more than about 2 years ago, went down many different paths and ultimately hit on this very novel formula of creating a commission that would be focused on best practices. Several of the people that I've worked on this legislation from the beginning will now be appointed as commission members, and I'm really grateful for that, for their continuing work here. But the timeliness of this initiative and the importance of community participation in our public safety mission, I think, is just now more apparent than ever, and more needed than ever. And I think it's so positive that we have something in this moment to be able to bring people in a different way and to create an institutional structure to continue to hear and get feedback from active people in the community about what best practices are or should be with our police and our public safety mission. So I think this is going to be an enduring, benefit, but we'll continue to hear about this in an ongoing way. And the caliber of people that we're appointing, whether a school teacher or a nationally known expert in criminal justice policy, they exemplify the best of Montgomery County. The individuals that we're appointing today are just incredible examples of what makes this community so special, so great, and one that I just love to serve. It's such an honor to serve. So thanks to all my colleagues. It was a journey, creating the legislation, going through this process of the interviews and the nominations. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I know that you are as well. So I couldn't be happier to have made this motion, and thank you. Can't wait to see the first meeting and start to get into the work of this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Reamer, for your leadership on the bill itself. I'm happy, and I'm also sad because we had so many people who were so good. And we said this before, but I just want to reiterate, for all of the folks who came out, there wasn't a single person who I wouldn't have said this person couldn't serve in the role on this police advisory board. Everyone was just that good. And so I just want to make sure that folks understand that. I encourage them to please keep involved and engaged. In fact, I encourage you to reach out to the Police Advisory Commission and keep engaged and involved with them too in their work, as well as with us as council members and in your community. It is obvious that you have a future in being a part of ensuring that we're headed in the right direction in all of the myriad of things that are incredibly important for us to do in this community. And so I, again, just wanted to say kudos to all of my colleagues, to how the process went. I thought it was incredibly smooth. So I thank staff. I thank you, Mr. President, for making that happen. And I feel really, really good about where we're headed and the potential that we've now set ourselves up for as a result. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Giwando.
Great minds think alike. I was going to say something very similar, that, this was one of the hardest decisions that I had to make, even to decide who we were going to interview. The list was so good of the 200 and plus. And similarly, please stay engaged with all of us individually and with the commission. You're a regular. I think for many people, having read the resumes, I think this is the first time many of the people that applied to anything to do with county government. And that is a great thing to set a record. And don't be discouraged. I think you have the same access that the commission has. They're just going to meet formally. And everyone that either was interviewed or applied, please stay engaged. This is going to be a long journey. We have much work to do. And so, again, and I want to thank all my colleagues. Councilmember Reamer, it's great to work on this legislation in a small part. And We had tried a new appointment process here, which I think was not as scary as everyone thought it was going to be, and I think we got really good results. So appreciate all my colleagues, and thank you to Councilmember Reamer for his leadership.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. What an amazingly impressive group of people. I was just so excited to hear everyone and to see the cross section, because I know that one of the things, at least for me, that's so important is to make sure that we have fresh voices, people who may not have been involved before coming forward. So congratulations to those that have been selected. But for those that did not get selected, I know I hope the clerk has kept all of their resumes, etc., because as we have so many different boards and commissions, I know in the past Ms. Lauer would utilize those resumes, etc., and send out the notices. And I think that now we have an incredible. I see Ms. Singleton doing the thumbs up. We have an incredible, cadre of resumes and people that I can think of so many different opportunities where we would love to have them help us out and really provide that kind of input. So congratulations to those that were appointed. Congratulations to all of those who applied. And I can't wait again to see many of them involved in very many different policy areas that we need a participation from. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've been asked to read the names, and I will at the end of this. But I just wanted to echo what others have said. This truly is a remarkable group of people, and everyone that applied could have easily been on this. I always remember that there used to be the play A Chorus Line, and at the end they had people in the beginning, and people were trying out for this play, and there were people that stepped forward and the people in behind, and you realize that either group could have gone forward and could have been in the moment that they were in, the chorus line. And that's exactly what we have with this group. There was not a person that we interviewed, and might I add, there were plenty of people that I would have liked to have interviewed too. We just didn't have enough space. But this is a remarkable group of people that we need them very dramatically to help us. And I think that during the times that they get to know each other, that they get to really enjoy each other's expertise in so many different ways. That is another way that we're going to have great growth in this area. Let me just say that the people who are nominated or who will be voted on very shortly are Cherie Branson, Carolyn Fredrickson, Jen Lynn, Shabib Ahmed Mirza, Jerome Price, Justice Reed, Vernon Ricks, Nadia Sandy, Eric Sterling, and that's from the County Council nominations. The County Executive has nominated Robin Gaster, Alicia Hudson, Dalvin Osorio, who's the youth member from age 26 to 35, Jasmine Williams, who's the youth member from age 25 or under. The interim chair will be Vernon Ricks, and the interim vice chair is Cherie Branson. And with that, we have a motion by Councilmember Reamer. We have a second by Councilmember Joando. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous, and it should be. Thank you very much for that passes unanimously. And with that, I know that everybody wants to continue to have this meeting, but we're going to have to adjourn. I know that's upsetting to people, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow at 1:30 and we have some committee work before that, so we won't be lonely from each other very long. But thank you all there you go. Thank you all very, very much. This was a long day, but it truly was a good day. Thank you.